This is not right. Han Sen saw the fish floating belly up, but noticed something amiss. If he had killed the transparent blighter, then he should have received an announcement, but there hadn't been one. Is that transparent fish faking its death? Han Sen watched it intently and saw the Z-steel bolt still resting embedded inside the fish's body. He didn't believe it had survived. If it was indeed faking its death, however, then how powerful or clever must the fish have been? Han Sen inched his way towards the pool, and this time, the silver fox did not stop him. He summoned his flaming Rex spike and set about trying to retrieve the fish from the water. Although the fish had indeed died, the bolt proved to be too heavy, and it made the fish sink. As a result, it was going to be a finicky trial attempting to fish up the fish. Han Sen placed the tip of the flaming Rex spike in the water, which caused it to fizz and produce heavy steam like water upon charcoal. The Rex spike was a powerful thing, but the weapon appeared to corrode and melt at its submerged end. Quickly, Han Sen returned the weapon. Fortunately, he had only put the flaming Rex spike in by about 10 centimeters. If Han Sen had put it any deeper, he was certain the entire weapon would have been destroyed. What is this? The flaming Rex spike surely cannot be any weaker than the Z-steel bolt. So why is the bolt okay and this fire-wreathed hunk of metal isn't? Does the liquid in the pool have an adverse effect when coming into contact with beast souls? Han Sen then summoned a sacred blood weapon to try it out, and upon touching the water, it was immediately destroyed. When he prodded the water with another Z-steel bolt, it was okay. It did corrode ever so slightly, but very slowly. The changes were granular in comparison to what happened with Han Sen's throwaway beast soul. Strange water. Han Sen had much surprise in his heart, but he had an idea. Han Sen brought out his Z-steel bolt and tied a rope to it. He was going to fire it at the dead fish and retrieve both the fish and bolt by pulling the rope. He only needed to pull it once. Even if the rope broke, he should be able to nab the fish before it melted. But when Han Sen fired the bolt, the fish seemed to move once more. It twisted its body and evaded the bolt. The Z-steel bolt in the creature's body was starting to look awfully corroded by this point, and when the fish moved, the bolt snapped in two and broke completely. It was shaken from the fish's body and sank to the bottom of the pool to suffer a corrosive demise. The transparent fish swam in a few circles, and the arrow wound immediately healed. Not even a scar remained. It really wasn't dead. This little fish is pretty strong. Although Han Sen had more Z-steel bolts, he didn't want to risk losing them to the troublesome fish. The fish had seen what the bolt could do, and now it swam around frantically. It refused to stay in one spot as it did when it was struck. It swam so fast, Han Sen couldn't have hit it even if he wanted to. Han Sen guessed that the fish didn't make much fuss last time because it believed that any arrow or bolt that struck the water would be useless, hence why it did not bother to dodge. Now, it knew it could be hurt, so it wasn't willing to stay still. The silver fox tilted its head and looked at Han Sen. Its eyes squinted as if it was humorously mocking Han Sen's failed attempts. This made the flustered master blush. If I knew things would turn out like this, I would have used the rope with the very first bolt. Han Sen circled the pool, unable to come up with a solution for dealing with the fish. Han Sen acknowledged that the fish was something special. If it wasn't, the silver fox wouldn't have been behaving the way it was. But if there was nothing they could do to deal with the fish, their efforts thus far would be entirely wasted. Han Sen thought about filling up the pool with rocks and draining it that way, but when he dropped in one rock, the fish swung its tail and batted the rock away like a baseball. There was a big splash, too, which almost soaked Han Sen. Fortunately, he was quick to react and dodge. God knew what would have happened had he not moved out of the way. F***CKU. I don't believe I cannot kill you. Han Sen summoned Moment Queen and consulted her, curious to see if she could come up with a solution to his ordeal. After Moment Queen was summoned and given a description of the problem, she looked at the fish and her cold face dropped into shock. What is it? Han Sen asked, noticing her reaction. Moment Queen did not answer immediately, and she looked as if she was trying to remember something. She looked at the fish in the pool again and said, "When I was in the third god's sanctuary, in one of the king's shelters, he had a fish." Han Sen noticed her immediately drop the tale she had begun, but his curiosity had been piqued. He wasn't too interested in the fish, but more about her herself. Moment Queen once told him she had been to the third god's sanctuary and had killed the son of a king. Now, she was telling him she had seen a fish in one of the king's shelters. If she leveled up ordinarily, how would she have received such an opportunity? And how was she left alive after slaying the son of a king? Merely being sent back to the second god's sanctuary seemed a rather tame punishment. This woman is an enigma. Moment Queen did not know what Han Sen was thinking, but she decided to continue her dialogue. She said, "The fish was 3 feet long, and it was transparent. It looked like jade. Its back possessed 3 blood vessels, and it had the name Third Life Bonefish. Although it was a fish, it was not a creature. It was in fact a water spirit. It had the ability to turn you into a walking skeleton. However, as long as you weren't dead, eating one of those fish fixes you right up." After a pause, Moment Queen continued by saying, "But Third Life Bonefish only live in their bone pools. The bone pool can melt everything, and a mere drop of the water can turn an entire living creature into walking bones. If a beast's soul touched it, it'd be gone in an instant. Nothing can survive its touch." "So, you mean to tell me that this is a bone pool? And this fish is the Third Life Bonefish?" Han Sen asked, filled with much surprise over her revelations. "It certainly looks like it, but genuine bone pools are much stronger than this. Without fitness, all it would take is the steam from such a pool to turn us into a pair of skeletons." Moment Queen eyed the fish once more and continued to say, "Besides, this fish does not look like the real Third Life Bonefish. The life force is not pure, unlike the one I used to know. Is this the bone pool and Third Life Bonefish?" Han Sen asked with a frown. "I don't know. If it isn't, it has to be fairly similar. Perhaps it is a subspecies?" Moment Queen said. "Then, how am I able to get the fish out of there?" Han Sen was still extremely fixated on its retrieval. Even if the creature in the pool wasn't the Third Life Bonefish that she had spoken of, it had to be something good. And if he confirmed its identity, then he would have no choice but to get it out of the pool and slay it. It would be an educational venture. "I have not learned of a way to ensnare a Third Life Bonefish, and similar to your troubles, that all stems from the difficulty posed by the bone pool it inhabits." Moment Queen shook her head. There was a treasure in front of Han Sen, but it was currently unobtainable. It was like a terrible itch, but just as Han Sen frowned in contemplation, his pocket vibrated. Then, the scallop shell magically removed itself from the pocket and flew over near the pool. The fairy exited the shell, reached out her delicate hand towards Moment Queen, and wiggled her index finger left and right. It was like she was saying, "You are wrong." She was visibly upset about Moment Queen's assertion of no one being able to enter the water. She flew near the pool and spat frosty air out across the surface of the water. The water in the pool began to freeze over relatively quickly. The fairy kept the icy pressure on and continued to blow frosty air until the entire pool was a block of ice. And as the water froze more and more, the fish went into a state of panic. But being unable to leave the pool, there was nothing it could do. As the water became ice, the fish's movements became slower and slower. When it had all turned to ice, the fish was trapped inside, motionless. With a cocky, boisterous face, the fairy turned to look at Han Senator. Then she turned back around and punched the ice with her fist. It shattered. As shards of ice scattered into the air and onto the ground around them, the fish was sent flying. With great speed, the fairy managed to catch the fish in her tiny hands. With the prize Han Sen sought, she flew over and did circles around him. This delighted Han Sen, and as he observed the fish the little fairy had obtained for him, he noticed how clean it looked. There was not a single speck of dirt nor a single minor blemish on it, and like it was a tantalizing ice lolly for a hot summer day, Han Sen grabbed it eagerly. Well, the little fairy finally did something of value. "It seems the time and expense I have spent treating you has finally paid off." Han Sen, receiving the fish, made sure to compliment the little fairy in his typical deadpan way. The little fairy was a little full of herself following this, so she went to sit on top of Han Sen's head, and as she settled down, she stuck her tongue out at Moment Queen in mockery of her inability to provide the aid that the fairy just had. "You want this?" Han Sen put the iced fish in front of the silver fox. It nodded, then gobbled the fish up in haste. Upon its consumption, Han Sen immediately noticed the silver fox's fur turning to crystal. It was quite eye-catching. Its crystallized fur fell to the ground as if it were shed, and new fur took its place. That such a small fish could provide such grand changes to the silver fox surprised Han Sen. But then Han Sen suddenly thought of something. Although the silver fox was aligned with the element of thunder, he did possess the ability to heal the wounds of others. With its medical licks, its healing abilities had proven useful for Han Sen on numerous occasions. But he hadn't relied on the silver fox as much, ever since Han Sen himself had learned how to heal through a simulation of the Holy Rhino's energy flow. After shooting it with the bolt, Han Sen noticed that the little fish had managed to heal itself rapidly. It most likely possessed healing capabilities, which was what attracted the silver fox to it so much. After the silver fox finished evolving, it leapt up into Han Sen's arms. It rubbed its head against Han Sen's chest and looked ecstatic. Han Sen stroked the silver fox's head, wondering why a creature with the power of thunder could also heal. It was a unique combo for the silver fox to have. I wonder where little silver came from? When I found it, it was merely an egg I discovered in a valley renowned for snakes. There aren't really any leads I can follow up on. Han Sen did not take his thoughts any further than that. Ultimately, he decided, it did not matter where it came from. But in recent times, a certain uneasy feeling began to nag at him. He worried that, despite his connection with the silver fox, it really was just a creature. If it wanted to enter the third god's sanctuary alongside Han Sen, it would need a breakthrough of sorts. And even if it could ascend to the third god's sanctuary, there was no guarantee they would end up at the same shelter together. I hope our distance won't be too great. Han Sen could only hope. Luoyin had spent much time searching for Han Sen, but had not yet been able to discover his whereabouts. He had, however, been informed of his recent appearance at a human shelter. Going there to investigate, he was still unable to locate him. All he could do after that was wait for another trail to pick up. He was very curious about Han Sen, thinking the falsified Sky Sutra was the strongest hyper-geno art in existence. And he did not understand why Han Sen, despite sharing the family's blood, refused to learn it. Sometimes Luoyin wished himself to be of true lineage to the Luo family, adamant in the belief of his inability of failing Luo Haitang. It was indeed a shame he was not of the Luo bloodline. He was initially a distant relative, but he was adopted by Luo Haitang and later taught the skill. I need to make Han Sen understand what he's missing out on by not learning the falsified Sky Sutra, Luoyin thought to himself. As Luoyin thought this, he suddenly saw a man walk by the gate. The figure had a tall and strong body. The person had a young face, with skin that was pale and a little pink. It was the sort of face that would make any woman jealous. On the man's shoulder rested a lazy-looking silver fox, and an elephant-like lion trotted behind them. Its back was loaded with things.
Han Sen.
Luoyin's eyes shone brightly, having never seen Han Sen in person before. All that he had seen were pictures and videotapes of the man. He believed that he knew Han Sen's appearance better than he did his own. Without hesitation, Luoyin approached him. He came with one purpose, and that was to educate Han Sen in how powerful the falsified Sky Sutra really was as a skill. Han Sen, seeing Luoyin approach, looked surprised. He recognized him from their prior encounter, when Han Sen had assumed his dollar persona. What is it? Han Sen looked at Luoyin, who was standing in front of him. You are Han Sen? Luoyin wasn't very fond of trouble, and neither did he like to beat around the bush. He wasn't going to waste any more time, so all he wanted to do after getting confirmation on his identity was to immediately reveal the power of the falsified Sky Sutra. Without saying another word, Luoyin threw his hand forward in an attempt to slash Han Senator. An invisible power flew towards him, on track as if it was its fate to damage him. Han Sen immediately activated his Dongxian aura. The invisible powers he had once been unable to track could now be locked onto and followed. Reaching out his hand, he brought with it the power of thunder. He swung his fist forward, but it did not seem to connect with Luoyin's attack at all. Pang! A bolt of lightning snapped the air as an invisible force shattered like glass, disappearing before Han Sen's eyes. Luo Yin's pupils became smaller, having witnessed his falsified sky power be blocked. He had not imagined such a thing to be possible. No way. Luo Yin could not accept this, unable to believe the powers of the falsified Sky Sutra could be prevented. Without reprieve, he moved to attack Han Sen again. But with a casual throw of his fist, Han Sen broke the next invisible force that lusted for his blood. Luo Yin's eyes were bloodshot as he madly attacked Han Sen with all his might and ferocity. It was all to no avail, however, as Han Sen effortlessly broke every single invisible force that was hurled at him. When all was said and done, he had not suffered a single scratch. He had repeatedly made use of the falsified Sky Sutra's most powerful attack, and it had not once hit Han Senator regardless of how many times he cast it. He could not even ruffle his target's clothes. Luo Yin thought Han Sen must have foresight into the future, being able to predict when, how, and where his attacks were going to come from. He believed every opportunity he could try to take advantage of would be useless due to it being foreseen by Han Sen, who had the power to control all.
Impossible. Impossible.
Han Sen was only blocking his attacks, not even fighting back. But Luo Yin began staggering backwards, muttering strangely as if he had just seen a ghost. His faith was collapsing, unable to believe someone of the same level could block his falsified sky power. He had never even considered such a thing could be possible. In Luo Yin's heart, the falsified Sky Sutra was the most powerful hyper-geno art in existence, and with it at his side, nothing could stop him. But the way Luo Yin perceived the world was thrown out of whack, following what he had just experienced. The falsified sky power had been blocked, useless against his foe. "You are from the Luo family?" Han Sen asked, looking at him. Luo Yin wanted to answer, but at that moment, he found himself incapable. He was suddenly overwhelmed by shame, a shame stemming from his association to the Luo family. "Well, go back. I am not from the Luo family." After Han Sen said this, he waved a golden growler and walked past the man who was now in shambles. Luo Yin's mouth continued to tremble, but it was still with the absence of words. He returned to the teleporter, seemingly in a daze. Luo Yin, back in the Alliance, could not wait to see Luo Haidang. He was going to tell him all that had transpired with Han Sen, and he also hoped Luo Haidang could speak a few words to renew his faith in the falsified Sky Sutra. "Luo Yin, what have you been up to recently? You have been kept busy, it seems." Luo Li saw Luo Yin meandering around, absent-minded. She had never seen him in such a state, so she couldn't help but engage him in dialogue. "I saw Han Sen," Luo Yin said. "And? What happened?" Luo Li's eyes suddenly burned bright, with an eagerness to hear the result. She had witnessed the fight with Yu Qielon, and understanding his strength, she acknowledged that Luo Yin might not have been able to beat him. But she also knew Luo Yin could attack Han Sen with falsified sky powers. All it would take was one hit from their sutra's power. Luo Yin wore a complicated expression, and when he finally mustered the courage to speak again, he muttered the words, "I failed." "What do you mean you failed?"
Luo Li frowned.
If Luo Yin lost to Han Sen, then it wouldn't outright surprise her. But she was unsure of what he meant by telling her he failed. "I attacked him 123 times with falsified sky powers. He blocked each and every attack, not even allowing me to brush his clothing." Luo Yin's eyes were usually very clear, but now they were cloudy and muddied with confusion. His world had been rocked by what had transpired between him and Han Sen. What? What do you mean?" Luo Li's body trembled with what she heard. Looking at Luo Yin, her eyes sunk. She seemed even less capable of believing and accepting what had just happened. "I really didn't land a hit." Luo Yin's lips shook under the realization that the faith he had established for the past 20 years had been wholly crushed. Luo Li merely stood there in silence, looking at Luo Yin. She knew he wasn't the sort to lie or embellish a tale. And acknowledging this, hearing the results of his fight with Han Sen made her stomach churn. Luo Li tried to move her lips, but she could not bring them to produce words. Her mind was in utter disarray, and she stood in silence with bleak eyes fixed on the panicking Luo Yin. He really blocked it? A long time after, Luo Li was finally able to speak. This simple sentence was packed with a variety of different emotions. Luo Yin's face turned bitter as he nodded to confirm what she asked. Come in, and tell me how he managed to block the falsified sky power. Luo Haitong's voice came from across the yard. He had heard their conversation. Luo Haitong's face looked serious. He knew Luo Yin would lose, but he never expected Han Sen would be able to block all of his attacks. Luo Yin accepted and entered the yard, a place he would only visit after receiving formal permission. The same applied to Luo Li, but she was keen to hear what exactly had transpired, so she quickly followed him in. Give me a detailed description of what happened when you fought. Don't skip a single detail, no matter how minor, Luo Haiteng told him. Luo Yin did just that, explaining to Luo Haiteng everything that happened from the moment he first laid eyes on Han Sen. Luo Haiteng furrowed his brows extremely tight, whereas Luo Li's mouth was agape. She looked as if she had just heard a great legend. Han Sen had casually blocked every one of Luo Yin's 123 attacks. To Luo Li, who believed the skill was invisible and impossible to trace, what she was hearing was nothing more than a fanciful yarn that did not have a glimmer of truth or credibility to it. After Luo Yin finished his description, Luo Haiteng became silent. Losing with the falsified Sky Sutra was a fine and acceptable possibility, but to have the attacks of the skill blocked was unheard of. Not only did Luo Li and Luo Yin not believe it, but Luo Haiteng could not, either. Luo Haiteng looked worried, wishing he could have seen how Han Sen had managed to block the falsified sky powers. What did little Lan teach that boy? Luo Haiteng thought this was all the work of Luo Lan. He had not and would not entertain the possibility that it had nothing to do with her. Han Sen did not consider the impact his block would have on the family. But after the fight was over, he was more than pleased with his success. It meant his vigorous practice had not been wasted. It was time well spent. Back in the Alliance, Han Sen made plans to go on Skynet and see if anyone had encountered any super creatures that would be viable for him to fight. With this information, he could return to the sanctuary and slay them. If he kept doing this, he believed he'd max out his super geno points in no time. But before he concluded his research, he received a message from Huangfu Pingqing, who he hadn't seen in a long time. She wanted Han Sen's advice picking a beast soul in the virtual community. Han Sen still had time, and he would be free that night, anyway. So, he told her to wait for him in the virtual community. He then logged into Skynet. Beast souls could not be traded in the Alliance, but they could be used. A seller could take pictures of them and sell them in the virtual community. If the buyer and seller were in the same shelter, or were at least in close proximity, they could take a look at the beast souls in the Alliance before contacting each other to establish the trade. Little Junior, you are a big hero now. It has been difficult getting in touch with you. Huangfu Pingqing joked to Han Sen as she greeted him in the virtual community. Han Sen laughed and replied, Yeah, if you need to see me again after today, you're going to have to start booking tickets. What? Are you the latest, greatest exhibit in the zoo? Huangfu Pingqing rolled her eyes. Hey, I am a rarer sort than any animal you might find in a zoo. Han Sen laughed, then asked, So, what beast soul are you looking to buy today? I have nothing particular in mind. I am just coming to see if there are any decent sacred blood beast souls worth investing in. Huangfu Pingqing grabbed Han Sen's arm and continued forward to the trading zone. Sure. Han Sen gave her a thumbs up, appreciating the way Huangfu Pingqing made it sound as if she was going to the supermarket for groceries. Huangfu Pingqing sighed in response, though. She said, I am not buying it for myself, I am buying it for my team. I am in charge of purchasing the beast souls, not using them. If I can experience what it feels like to spend a whole lot of money without it actually costing me a penny, that's great. This is the best job ever. You can hire me for this task whenever you fancy, Han Sen joyously told her. We're not hiring, sorry. I just needed an assistant to accompany me. Huangfu Pingqing smiled and then tugged Han Sen along to the trading shop. There, details of a variety of beast souls were on display. Huangfu Pingqing searched for sacred blood beast souls and clicked for more information. She was given an unfathomably large slew of data and accompanying images. Huangfu Pingqing was in an enormous human shelter, and many people were selling beast souls near her. She clicked on many different beast souls, and each time she did, she asked Han Sen for his opinion. Overall, The information he provided was lacking, and Huangfu Pingqing seemed to be doing well enough not to need him around. After browsing the trading zone, she suddenly asked Han Sen, "Are you interested in a pet fight? Is that why you asked me out?" Han Sen smiled and asked, "Little Junior, men need to feign dumbness to make women happy." Huangfu Pingqing said it in the manner of a jest, but it was a truthful admission for her. "I am way past the age in which I need to please women." Han Sen slumped his shoulders. "In that case, you are terribly incorrect. Men should strive to please women their entire lives," Huangfu Pingqing rebutted. Let's go back to the pet match." Han Sen did actually believe he needed to improve upon his lacking desire to please women. Well, in the past few years, humans have been showing a greater interest in having pet beast souls. This is especially true in the first and second god sanctuaries. When humanity began taking control of these two sanctuaries, the flesh of creatures was abundant. Over time, there were far more free resources available to feed pet beast souls. That's how things have gotten to where they are now. Huangfu Pingqing stopped, smiled, and then continued. "The primary reason they have gotten so popular of late, however, is you. Your angel pet has made many factions turn their focus and attention to the raising of pets. That being said, the strongest type of pets they have been able to achieve are berserk sacred blood types. And even those are very rare, even for the big factions." Then what is up with the pet matches? Han Sen did not want to discuss his little angel. The Donglin Company focuses on pet beast souls the most, and in the past few years, people have been buying incredible numbers of pet beast souls. With the increase in demand, their worth has tripled. It's showing no sign of slowing down, either. The prices are still rising, and it is the Donglin Company that is to blame. She looked at Hin and continued, "Recently, they have been having pets fight in the alliance. Very good prizes are offered to those who are in first place, and the exclusive Donglin medicine that is not available for sale is a frequent item up for grabs. And well, I need that medicine. You want me to win that medicine for you?" Han Sen looked at Huangfu Pingqing and asked, "With your angel pet, I don't think anything can rightly stop you from winning." Huangfu Pingqing smiled at Han Senator. She blinked and fluttered her eyelids to attract him, and then continued by saying, "Of course, I couldn't ask this of you for free. Whatever you desire, I can satisfy you." Han Sen smiled wryly and said, "Senior, I would really like to help, but why would Donglin even allow me to join? They would be giving the prize out for free. Surely they are not that dumb." "You are wrong. Donglin themselves want you to join, and that is partly why I came looking for you." Huangfu Pingqing responded with immediacy. Han Sen was shocked, thinking something was amiss. There was most certainly something he had not been told. The people at Donglin were not dumb, so why would they allow Han Sen to accept a big prize so easily? They would be handing out free stuff. This must be a conspiracy. Han Sen was firm in the belief this was not normal, and something was going on behind the scenes. This is a match that takes place in the Alliance. No matter how brave the Qi family is, they wouldn't attack you in public. Are you afraid of them? Huangfu Pingqing pulled out a pamphlet of information and continued by saying, "Take a look at what you can receive by winning." Han Sen took a look at the list, and there were impressive rewards on offer for the top 10 that took part. You'd get even more if you were in the top 5. The person in first place would receive a ridiculous number of goodies. There was plenty of that special medicine that was not available for sale, including a type that had a limited run and was special even to members of Donglin. Having prizes as things that could not be bought with money was quite fantastic. If you do win first place, I genuinely hope you can sell me those beast pills. Name your price, Huangfu Pingqing said. I'll need to sleep on it. I'll give you my answer sometime in the next couple of days." Han Sen saw the first place prizes and was shocked, thinking they were far too good. If that medicine was available for general sale, many would buy it for exorbitant prices. Han Sen had even wanted some of that medicine before, as well, but the opportunity to get it had never come around. After all, it could not be bought with money, and you would need the right timing. What is wrong with that guy in Donglin? It is so obvious he seeks to offer this stuff to me for free. After Huangfu Pingqing left, Han Sen started thinking about what was truly going on with this proposed pet fight. When Han Sen returned, he asked around, The general consensus was that no one really knew what Dong Lin was doing by allowing his participation. Is Dong Lin really going to be this nice? Han Sen struggled to believe they would. No matter which way you look at it, and provided it isn't a trap, then they are being nice. Otherwise, they simply wouldn't let you participate in the pet fights, Ji Yanran said. Do you think there is an ulterior motive to this kindness of theirs? Is it a conspiracy? Han Sen looked at Ji Yanran with concern. I don't know, but the match has been arranged to take place in the Central Galaxy. It won't be hosted in Donglin itself, so there is nothing the Qi family can do. Ji Yanran wasn't really sure what to make of it either. If there was a conspiracy, there was no way they would dare do something aggressive towards Han Sen and the Alliance. That was, unless they had lost their minds and gone completely insane. Even if they didn't care about the fact that he was the president's son-in-law, getting the Luo family mad would lead to the Dong Lin company being destroyed in a single day. Are you going to go? Ji Yanran looked at Han Sen and asked. Yes, of course. Why would I turn down some free goodies? If the matches really are taking place in the Central Galaxy instead of Dong Lin, then there is nothing to be afraid of.
Han Sen låg head.
Well, be careful. That man in Dongling is not soft, Ji Yanran reminded him. Okay. Han Sen nodded, but his mind was already adrift. He was pondering how he might split up the prize medicine he'd win. He needed some more Geno creation pills, as the silver fox had eaten them all. Therefore, it was about time he restocked. Han Sen booked a holiday to the Central Galaxy and went to visit his mother and father-in-law. He had dinner with Ji Ruojian, and after they finished, they had a discussion about the pet matches. Ji Ruojian guessed Dong Lin meant no harm and were being sincere, hence why they were hosting the event elsewhere. It was a place they did not have exclusive control of. Maybe the Qi family would like a favor off you, Ji Ruojian said. Then, he continued, but that is only a guess. Regardless of how things may seem, exercise caution and be careful when you go there. Han Sen gestured in agreement, and Ji Ruojian continued his dialogue. The match starts tomorrow. This will be your first time in the Central Galaxy, yes? Ji Qing will be there, so allow her to be your tour guide. Wait, the Ji Qing who slew a super creature? Han Sen was surprised. Yes, and she wants to see you. She has wanted to for a while, but she has been unable to see you due to your commitments to the army. Now seems a fitting time. Ji Ruojian paused for a brief moment, then went on to say, but this girl is really quite arrogant. If she offends you in any way, don't take it to heart. Han Sen confirmed his understanding. Even if she was arrogant and offensive, Han Sen wouldn't bother picking a fight with a little girl. But when Han Sen saw Ji Qing, he was wrong. She was not a young person, as he suspected. She looked more mature than Ji Yanran, and she was beautiful and charming. Little Qing, treat Han Sen well. This is his first time in the Central Galaxy, so make sure to hit the hot spots and show him around. Ji Ruojian smiled warmly at Ji Qing as he bid the request. Do not worry, uncle. I will treat him well. Ji Qing smiled back. Brother-in-law, let's go. Ji Qing walked in front of Han Sen and smiled. Han Sen followed her out and was led to an aircraft. She hopped into the pilot's seat and asked him to step in. Little Qing, are you driving this? Han Sen thought a renowned member of the family such as her would have bodyguards by her side, or at least a chauffeur for a pilot. Who else? Ji Qing asked Han Sen as she started up the engine. I thought you'd have a bodyguard or something, Han Sen said. This is the Central Galaxy, and there are robotic spies everywhere you look. They have guns that can nail targets a great distance away, with an accuracy metric of millimeters. If anyone posed a threat, they'd hit the ground dead within 10 seconds. Ji Qing smiled and launched the aircraft. Is there anywhere specific you'd like to go? Ji Qing asked Han Sen as she flew the craft. It's my first time here, so I don't know what's on the menu. Why don't you decide on where we should go? And once we're done, take me back, Han Sen said. I can't do that. Uncle told me to treat you well, so how about I take you someplace fun? Ji Qing had an enigmatic smile as she turned the aircraft in another direction and accelerated. When he saw her smile, Han Sen knew it wouldn't be long before he found himself in trouble that night. She was obviously cooking up a devious scheme, but Han Sen did not mind too much, and so he placed his gaze on what he could see out the windows. The starscapes in the Central Galaxy were different and incredibly beautiful. This was his first time seeing such vistas, and so the sights were particularly special to him. Han Sen pointed at things he did not know about and asked about them. Ji Qing answered everything but felt a little uncomfortable. Ji Qing thought herself to be the first person to slay a super creature and obtain a life geno essence, and she believed Han Sen to be the second. But now, whenever people discussed super creatures and life geno essences, they thought about Han Senator. It seemed as if everyone had forgotten she was the first, which made her a little upset. Furthermore, she had heard many people in her own family gush praise and compliments towards Han Senator. It made her a little envious, hence her eagerness to meet the Thunder Thief. She wished to see how smart he was. If Han Sen was as smart as everyone was saying, she would have felt better about things. But right now, Han Sen was behaving like a curious child. He didn't look half as powerful as people were saying. She felt it was unfair to have her reputation and limelight stolen by a guy such as him. Of course, she knew she couldn't judge someone through this alone. Therefore, she had prepared something to gauge Han Sen's true power. She wasn't going to fight Han Sen herself, as she wasn't even an evolver yet. She knew Han Sen had recently beat Yu Qielon, but she believed she was only a few levels below Han Senator. If she became an evolver, she believed she'd be stronger than him. For him to beat Yu Qielon was nothing. But right now, Ji Qing had prepared something a lot more fun for Han Sen. Thinking of that, she couldn't keep the weird smile from creeping across her face. Her eyes squinted queerly. Soon after, the aircraft landed atop a large skyscraper. Han Sen and Ji Qing sat at a table face-to-face. Many people bid passing greetings to her, indicating her familiarity and popularity with the people there. When Han Sen looked around, he noticed a battle stage. 2 people were currently atop it, in a friendly bout of black and white boxing. Ji Qing was very good at black and white boxing. It was something that helped train your psychological fortitude, and it wasn't something won by outright strength alone. For power in that game, your mind had to be strong. If it wasn't, you'd be carrying an unloaded gun. Since Ji Qing was good at this, she brought Han Sen in the desire of testing his mind. Sister Qing, it has been a while since you last visited. And you brought a man with you. Is he your new boyfriend? My, you go through them quickly. A stylish young man approached and seemed to be quite close with her. He immediately sat down and spoke to her casually.
Tu Bin.
Do not talk such rot. This is my brother-in-law. Han Senator, you must have heard of him, yes? He is the big hero that defeated the royal Shura Yu Qielon. He is not like you. When Ji Qing said that, she conveyed a certain amount of seriousness, but it was betrayed by lively eyes that suggested a smile. Tu Bin was the son of a boss of a financial department someplace. His style exuded the look of a young gangster, but it was far from his true identity. He was rather famous in the realm of black and white boxing, and he was only slightly inferior to Ji Qing. Tu Bin and Ji Qing's relationship was not as close as one might suspect, however. They had no personal conflict with each other, but they frequently came here to spar and battle against each other with a mutual respect. They did not hate each other, but they fought frequently. They never battled elsewhere, just here to help each other become better at this specific sport. Beyond the confines of this area, they did whatever 2 young friends might get up to. Ah, you are the big hero Han I've heard about? My apologies. It was difficult to discern whether Tu Bin's words were sincere or possessed undertones of sarcasm. Yes, so, presuming you have no other business to take up with me, I suggest you go elsewhere. Do not disturb me right now, Ji Qing plainly told Tu Bin. If you came here alone, I would most certainly remove myself from your presence. But today, Hero Han has come. If I did not ask him to practice with me, that would be a shameful missed opportunity. Tu Bin then turned to look at Han Sen and continued, Hero Han, would you like to provide me some tips? Nah, I haven't played this game in a long time, Han Sen casually said. Tu Bin looked ready to say something, but he was interrupted by sudden loud noises coming from beyond a doorway. It looked like something was underway. What's that ruckus all about? Tu Bin asked. Wanting to keep talking to Han Senator, no one replied. The people who came to this place were typically quite young. Although Tu Bin had quite a background, there were a lot more people with far greater histories behind them. Han Sen and Ji Qing looked to where the noises came from, and they noticed a lot of people had gathered to chant someone's name. There were so many people. Han Sen wasn't sure what was going on. He activated his Dongxian aura in a bid to learn more. What he saw surprised him. It was all started by one person, and that person was Yi Dongmu. He had actually come to this place, and he looked quite popular, too. This is not fair. Why are handsome men so popular everywhere? Han Sen's heart felt betrayed. He was a hero, but no one really seemed to recognize him. Yet Yi Dongmu was receiving all the attention in the world. These thoughts did not immediately leave Han Sen's mind, either. It didn't feel right, so he touched his cheek and thought, it's not right. I am handsome. I must look better than that Yi Dongmu. But why am I not receiving his treatment? Do people just love a miserable emo more than they do a genuinely beautiful man? As Han Sen contemplated all this, Ji Qing and Tu Bin stood up. They too looked excited, seeing Yi Dongmu ascend the battle stage. Little Qing, what are you looking at?
Han Sen asked Yi King.
I am looking at Yi Dongmu. Who else would I be looking at? Ji Qing said, as she started walking forward to take a seat closer to the stage so she could watch Yi Dongmu perform. Is he that good a person to look at? Han Sen was genuinely confused. Although Han Sen was willing to admit Yi Dongmu was a little handsome, others were keen to suggest Yi Dongmu might be more handsome than he himself. And that was too much for Han. Senator Ji Qing was a renowned lady of the Ji family, too. There was no way she'd regress into another member of the Yi Dongmu fangirl horde. Was there? Ji Qing opened her mouth but did not say anything. Tu Bin looked annoyed by what Han Sen asked and said, Hero Han, you may have beat the Shura and shown a light on the alliance, but I do not advocate or appreciate what you have just asked. Yi Dongmu is a god to the people of this martial hall. He beats everyone in the central galaxy and never, ever loses. You may be strong, but in black and white boxing, I don't think you stand a chance against Yi Dongmu. Only someone like Dollar could do that. Ji Qing was going to say something, but he covered all the bases for her, and she agreed with every last word. If the ordinary elites in the martial hall could not beat Han Sen, there was little to gain. But if Han Sen went up against Yi Dongmu and defeated him, his true strength would most certainly be revealed. That would prove a thing or two to Ji Qing. Naturally, however, Ji Qing did not believe Han Sen could defeat Yi Dongmu. She only wanted to gauge his strength in comparison to the others. But Ji Qing squinted her eyes and smiled. She said, Tu Bin, I am not fond of what you just said. My brother-in-law can beat a royal Shura, so I'm sure he can beat Yi Dongmu. Ji Qing did not say this in earnest. In her heart, she said to herself, I am sorry, Yi Dongmu. I have no choice. I do support you, but if I am to get Han Sen to reveal his true strength, he must go up against you. When Tu Bin heard this, he became infuriated. Yi Dongmu was not only his friend, but a god to the place. Tu Bin merely stood up, clapped his hands, and shouted, Quiet! Everyone quiet! Everyone looked in his direction, unsure of what was happening. Someone who was friendly with Tu Bin interrupted the sudden silence and asked, Tu Bin? Tu Bin, what the hell? Tu Bin then jumped on top of a chair. He pointed his finger at Ji Qing and said, Our Ji family lady, Ji Qing, just said her brother-in-law, this Han Sen, the big hero Han who beat the royal Shura Yu Qielon, could beat our god in black and white boxing. Boo! Boo noises erupted all across the room, with not a single speck of support for Han Sen. Han Sen's face remained emotionless, looking at Tu Bin. He thought the young men around him were rather interesting, as they were all considered high class in the alliance. They might not have all belonged to the same factions, but as was displayed by Yi Dongmu, an individual's power was respected. This principle kept things simple. Hero Han, do you dare challenge our god? Tu Bin was very confident in Yi Dongmu's abilities, so he established the proposition of a battle against Yi Dongmu on his behalf. Ji Qing was sneakily happy at the reaction her comment incited, as this was what she hoped would happen. Her trick had worked, and now, she could bear witness to Han Sen's true power. Many others were overjoyed at the prospect of what had been proposed, as many people would have liked to see what would occur in a battle between Han Sen and Yi Dongmu. Han Sen had beaten Yu Qielon in a fight and had made the alliance look good, which had established Han Sen as something of a hero. If there was one thing that united humanity, it was a common enemy, and at this point in time, that enemy was more often than not the Shura. But with the Shura out of the picture for the time being, although Han Sen was still regarded as a hero, The desire for humans to fight amongst themselves was always prone to crop up. When not united, families resegregated and factions re-established their borders. The people who did not like Han Sen, and those who opposed or did not like the Ji family, cared little for his recently achieved status as hero. Amidst everyone's joy, Lee Dongmu approached. At his movement, all fell silent. Lee Dongmu's personality was rather quiet, and he excelled in the realm of assassination skills. He was generally a cold person, and being close with him was difficult due to his chilly disposition. Everyone who was present knew about him and admired him, but few personally spoke with him. And now, everyone watched Lee Dongmu approach Han Senator. They thought Lee Dongmu was ready to challenge Han Sen, and so their excitement began to simmer. The people there all believed Lee Dongmu was the strongest, but with Han Sen having just beaten a royal shura, they knew he was an opponent who should not be underestimated. Whatever was about to occur, one thing was for certain. It would be a crazy fight. Ji Qing was supremely excited, just as the rest were. The palms of her hands were sweaty with anticipation. Being able to see Lee Dongmu personally challenge another was an extremely rare occurrence, and it had only happened once over the course of the past few years. Only the enigmatic dollar received his request. Seeing Lee Dongmu approach Han Sen, everyone perked their ears and leaned a little closer to hear what might be spoken. Ji Qing's eyes were open wide, watching Lee Dongmu himself approach her. In her heart, she said to herself, "Come on, Yi God. Beat him. I know you can do it. Beat him badly." She watched as Lee Dongmu and Han Sen locked gazes, anticipating the big fight that was just waiting to be started. But Lee Dongmu only sat down next to Han Sen, and when he turned to look at him, said, "When did you get here?"
Today, Han Sen ansvared.
"Do you have time?" Lee Dongmu asked. "Yeah."
Han Sen nodded.
"Do you want to come over to my place? I've been practicing something new, and it'd be great if you could come check it out for me." After saying this, Lee Dongmu stood up. "Little Qing, you hang around for a while longer. I have to take off." Han Sen smiled to Ji Qing and left the place alongside Lee Dongmu. Han Sen was aware of Ji Qing's game and considered it childish, not wanting to play any part in her schemes. Things were always much quieter with Lee Dongmu, a person whose company he vastly preferred. He didn't enjoy hanging around noisy kids, and someone like Lee Dongmu was mature and not into playing silly games or talking nonsense. Seeing Han Sen and Lee Dongmu walk out together, Ji Qing froze. And she wasn't the only one, either. Many of the other young people who had gathered were all in shock, as well. Han Sen was the first person they had seen Lee Dongmu invite to join him someplace else. And what's more, Lee Dongmu had asked Han Sen to personally review a new skill he had been practicing. Lee Dongmu was lacking faith in a skill, and he asked Han Sen for advice. People were quite shocked. Ji Qing was numbed for half the day. She had only wanted Lee Dongmu to gauge Han Sen's power for her. Her mind was a vortex of confusion, trying to grasp how powerful Han Sen might have been if he was going to teach Lee Dongmu something. "Wait for me. I'm coming with you," Ji Qing said. When her mind returned, a thought had entered her mind. If she followed Han Sen, that meant she could visit Lee Dongmu's house. Ji Qing ran really fast to catch up, no longer caring for her previously established look of an elegant lady. Tu Bin, seeing Ji Qing run, went after her, too. He knew he had messed up, doing what he did. He was Lee Dongmu's friend, but he had not known Han Sen was his friend, also. He had tried to put them at odds, to go against each other. For this, he was feeling much regret. "Brother Sen, I am sorry. I did not know you were acquainted with Lee Dongmu," Tu Bin pleaded with visible guilt. "That's okay. For old Yi to have a friend like you is rather fortunate."
Han Sen smiled.
The foursome boarded Lee Dongmu's aircraft, and he flew them over to his private training ground. Lee Dongmu was not fond of chatting, so he didn't say much on their travel. When they arrived at his training place, he and Han Sen did not take their time in starting the practice. They had done this many times before, and so a verbal exchange was hardly necessary. Just like before, when Lee Dongmu attacked, Han Sen was able to block and explain to him exactly what the problem was. As they went at it, Ji Qing and Tu Bin watched them, frozen, almost unable to believe how much Han Sen was like a coach. Ji Qing felt so embarrassed over her prior ploy of trying to get Han Sen and Lee Dongmu to butt heads and fight each other. Of course, Others thought much too highly of their relationship. Idongmu believed Han Sen to be his mirror image. It was easy to spot the flaws of others, but acknowledging and correcting your own was always a trial. Therefore, finding someone you could consider your mirror image was very fortunate. But if you weren't on the same level, you couldn't be a mirror image. This was just like Bo Yazichi. People had to be on the same level as you to acknowledge and understand your flaws. Jiqing and Tu Bin were not on his level yet, and so they did not understand this concept. They merely believed Han Sen had a simple power advantage, and that made him a suitable coach to teach and train Lee Dongmu. And that student, the revered Lee Dongmu they cherished, was listening like a little child. They could hardly believe this was the cold and cool Lee Dongmu they had practically worshipped moments before. Is my brother-in-law that strong? Jiqing observed Han Sen with a complicated expression, not daring to underestimate him as she had earlier. After a while of watching them work, she started to believe Han Sen really was brilliant. Idongmu's practice of assassination skills put much focus on one's mental fortitude, and for Han Sen to challenge it without an issue was remarkable. It showed her how frightening a foe he could be. Brother-in-law is so cool, Jiqing thought. Jiqing returned from Dongmu's place with an altered perception of Han Sen. Brother-in-law, if you ever find the time, please teach me something. Jiqing believed Han Sen must have been a very powerful person to have Dongmu request his assistance in training, and then to point out every mistake he was able to notice. One could learn many things from practicing with Han Sen, perhaps in the future. For now, the pet battles will begin soon and I must prepare. Although Jiqing was a beautiful lady, Han Sen wasn't very fond of her. It was not difficult to find someone who was your mirror image in this world. What was most difficult to find was a firm heart. Few people could listen to others pointing out their flaws. Jiqing was not Dongmu, and she might not have had the patience and understanding to listen to and follow the guidance he could provide. If she could not accept her flaws and work to eliminate them, she would not improve. There was also the chance she might have ended up doubting herself, something that could lead to an entirely different problem. Han Sen knew much about Dongmu, and their mutual respect went beyond simple friendship. It took something special to accept the constant revealing of flaws, so Han Sen wasn't willing to offer this manner of training to just anyone. If Dongmu was only a good friend and nothing more, he wouldn't do this for him. The concept dates back to the ancient Emperor Li Shimin. He said Wei Zheng was a mirror image of himself, and the emperor sought for him to expose all of his flaws. But in the end, he could not accept the admonition. The hate that had swollen up inside Li Shimin grew over time, and when Wei Zheng finally died, Li Shimin dug up and desecrated his body. Not everyone could handle the truth, and this included Han Senator. Unless it was a very special person, he wouldn't say too many truths. Jiqing was not fond of what he said, and so she told him, "There is nothing to prepare for. You have a super pet, so you'll definitely win, won't you? I don't think Dong Lin and the Qi family are willing to just hand over such generous rewards. I think something big is set to go down, and so I need to prepare just in case." Quickly, Han Sen said goodbye and returned to his room. He was going to go back to the sanctuary the next day and return when the matches were about to begin. He wasn't keen on having his little Annie hanging around and annoying him much longer. Back in the sanctuary, Han Sen continued playing with his gourd. His eyes did not rest still for a moment, as he had received some information indicating the presence of a nearby super creature. He left in search of the creature, interested in taking a look at it before the pet fights began. After walking for a while, he saw a white male deer trotting across a moor. He was overjoyed, for this was the super creature that he had been told about. The white deer approached, and so Han Sen used his Dongxian aura to scan it. His joy elevated even more upon learning it was a second-generation super creature. I am far too lucky today. A solo second-generation super creature, huh? I am going to be rich. Han Sen was delighted, so he summoned the little angel and moment queen. With his flaming Rex spike in hand, he ran quickly towards the deer. The white deer, when it saw Han Sen, began to run. It ran so fast it was like white lightning, and so Han Sen commanded Moment Queen to prevent its hasty departure. She teleported right in front of the white deer and punched it crudely, knocking it down to the ground. The little angel flew in front of the white deer and cleaved it with her great sword, slicing a nasty cleft across its back. With the cascade of blood that flowed out, its previously white fur became red. Han Sen joined them in front of the white deer, planning to slit its throat. But just as he was about to, the white deer appeared to beg Han Sen for its life. It didn't look harmful, and it didn't seem as if it wanted to attack. It looked frightened, and all it did was plead for mercy. Is this really a super creature? Han Sen used his Dongxian aura to take a look and confirmed that it was indeed a second-generation super creature. But why does it not resist me and lash back at its attackers? Han Sen did not yet make a move, and all he did was frown. If it was a murderous monster, he would have slaughtered it already. With the white deer not having fought back, it seemed like a harmless sheep, and he felt bad at the prospect of killing it. Moment, should I kill it? Conflicted, Han Sen turned to Moment Queen. Not wanting to be responsible for its death, he wished for her to kill it on his behalf, to pretend that its death would not be on his hands, so he could feel better about it. In simpler words, he would be lying to himself. Han Sen truly did not want to kill such a harmless creature, but he didn't want to let it go and hinder his own personal development. The super geno points it could provide would further the progression of Han Sen's evolution. Moment Queen looked at the white deer and said to Han Sen, "Well, if you can spare it, spare it. Return it to Moment Shelter." "Why?" Han Sen furrowed his eyebrows and looked at Moment Queen, believing she did not have what it took to slay the helpless creature, either. What use would a creature be in a shelter if it could not fight, but could only run away? It would not be able to guard or even call out for aid. Moment Queen looked at the deer and said, "If I am not mistaken, this deer possesses luck. It may look useless, but it provides good fortune to those in its proximity." "What? Couldn't you have told me that sooner?" Han Sen immediately put on a smile and moved in front of the deer. He squatted down beside it and used his holy light to heal its wounds. "It was a misunderstanding, my dear. Do not take it to heart and harbor ill sentiments. I love animals and I am a pacifist, believe it or not. I go on protests and everything. Come with me, I will treat you well." Han Sen kept healing the deer, waxing lyrical without a care over whether or not it understood what he was telling it. Han Sen was well aware of the benefits luck could provide. With good luck, there was a higher chance of obtaining beast souls. And that was important. People like Wang Yuhang, born into a state of constant misfortune, struggled terribly. Little ever happened to improve their luck. With this deer in his shelter, Han Sen's luck was most likely only going to improve. It wasn't easy to track or trace a creature such as this, and even when they found it, pursuing it was difficult. Moment Queen had no choice but to use her teleportation to stop it from getting away. It would have most likely been impossible for any other person or super creature to catch up with it. After Han Sen healed the white deer, it appeared very tame. It did not run off again, but merely stood where it was. "All right, let's go to Moment Shelter." Han Sen decided to end his hunt for more super creatures and instead returned the deer to Moment Shelter. He thought the deer might run off if they did not return at once. Furthermore, the pet battles were soon to commence, and Han Sen could not waste any time or stray too far. Back in Moment Shelter, Han Sen was able to put the white deer at ease. It didn't look like it was going to run off, so that took a load off his mind. It was almost time now, and so Han Sen quickly packed. He returned to the Alliance and prepared to join the matches. "I want to see what the hell the Chi family is up to." Han Sen looked at his beast soul and then smiled. The stadium that hosted the pet matches could seat 500,000 attendees. The turnout was even larger than expected, however, and it wasn't long before all the seats were taken. Fortunately, Han Sen had been invited to compete in the matches directly and did not have to compete in the knockout stages for eligibility in the final competition. Being given a slot in the top 100 saved him much time. Han Sen was surprised to see Qi Xiuwen as the primary host. He was equally surprised to see that not many of the Qi family were attending, and there were only a few surpassers present. With such a gathering surrounding him, Han Sen felt as if he didn't have to fear anything the Qi family might try. Does the Qi family truly have a favor they wish to ask of me? Han Sen frowned, still feeling uneasy over the entire affair. If there was something the Qi family wanted, they could have sought him out in private. There was no need for them to go to such lengths and make such a big fuss. When Han Sen came out, he summoned the little angel and commanded her onto the stage. When the audience saw Han Sen arrive with his little angel, there was much screaming. Many people had come solely so they could see the little angel with their own eyes. The ordinary people of the audience did not know about the history of the little angel, so when they laid eyes upon the beautiful humanoid pet for the first time, they were rightfully taken aback. The little angel beat her first opponent with ease. She laid waste to the opposition effortlessly, but under Han Sen's command, she didn't destroy their beast souls. This was just a friendly match in a spirited competition, so there was no need to harbor a grudge or take things too far. There was no need to kill the beast souls of others. Old Han, your pet is awesome. While Han Sen rested in between matches, many people came to see them. Many of them wished to get a closer look at the little angel. Something is wrong, Han Sen thought. Is the Chi family using my little angel as a way to attract greater numbers of people? If so, what benefits might they earn? More money from ticket sales? Greater amounts of beast soul sales? Even so, the money they'd get would not cover the cost of the prizes they want to hand out, Han Sen mulled. When finished, Han Sen got up and left the sitting room. He wanted to observe the other matches that were taking place and see what other pets were being used. Han Sen, upon seeing them all, thought one stood out in particular. It was a black, heavily armored pangolin pet. When he saw it, his eyes sparkled with desire and understanding. That's why. The Chi family really did think this through. They have used my super pet as an advertisement. Well played. Han Sen coldly laughed in his heart. But at the same time, Han Sen was surprised. He had unearthed the true purpose of the Chi family's supposed charity. The pangolin beast soul was very powerful. It didn't show its true strength yet, but it managed to beat a sacred blood creature with ease. Most people believed it to be a berserk sacred blood pet, but it wasn't. Its life force was greater than what a berserk sacred blood pet could achieve. Although it wasn't as strong as a super creature, its power was still quite scary. It was far more powerful than an ordinary berserk sacred blood pet. After this particular beast soul showed up and displayed its prowess, Han Sen knew exactly what was going on. Dong Lin became famous through the creation of geno medicine. Their geno creation pill was something even the silver fox loved, and not only that, it was something that seemed to benefit the silver fox quite a bit. It looked like Dong Lin had created another type of medicine to make pet beast souls even stronger. They definitely wanted to try this amped-up pet of theirs against the little angel. If a sacred blood pet could fight a super pet and not lose too badly due to a new type of medicine, the medicine would be much sought after. Not to mention that the pangolin was already crushing other sacred blood pets along the way. After the competition was over, Dong Lin would most likely announce their new pet medicine. It would be a remarkable advertisement ploy, and the money they'd rake in would be unfathomable. Han Sen believed the medicine would take a long time to take effect, though. As a result, such a product needed an effective advert to sell it. Plus, it was highly likely Dong Lin would sell the medicine at a high price. But for something that would allow a person's pet to challenge super creatures, countless people would be willing to cough up the fee. That's smart, Han Sen said to himself. Although Dong Lin offered a brilliant prize for those who came first, it was almost as if it served as payment for Han Sen being manipulated into advertising for them. And as enticing as the prizes were, he didn't like the fact he had been used. Do they think they can get away with using my little angel by offering me a measly prize? They are too naive. As disgruntled as he now was, Han Sen thought he should still give the Chi family a chance to correct their mistake. He looked up Chi Xiuan's phone number and gave him a call. When he received the call, Chi Xiuan was watching a match. With a frown, he answered it. Leader Han, what can I do you for? Although Chi Xiuan was one of Han Sen's subordinates, he didn't like him very much. If the Dong Lin Company wishes to use my pet as an advertisement, the least they could do is consult me for my asking price. Han Sen said, not beating around the bush. How does he know what we have sought to do? His face changed, and so he smiled and said, Leader Han, we are having a pet contest. It is only natural that we advertise and make our company heard. But we offer high prizes, and such is the cost of business. I am giving you one chance right now to pay me a suitable fee. If you don't pay me, don't blame me for any unfortunate accidents that might soon occur, Han Sen coldly said. Qi Xuan forced a smile and said, Leader Han, if there is anything you ever need, you know you can tell me, and I will help you achieve your desires to the best of my abilities. Han Sen acknowledged Qi Xuan's attempt at shirking. Understanding he wasn't going to be serious with him, Han Sen said, I don't need your help. Instead, I am helping you. Think about it, would you? After that, Han Sen concluded the call and hung up. Qi Xuan's face drooped with immediate worry, and in a great haste, he contacted his father. Father, Han Sen knows what we are up to. What should we do? Should we pay him? Qi Xuan asked. Ignore him. We have already started advertising the pet medicine, so we no longer have need of him. The pangolin only needs to perform well in its fight against the super pet, and once it does, our plans will have fully succeeded. The cold voice came from the other end of the communicator. What if we don't pay him and he quits? Qi Xuan said. We have already begun advertising. If he quits now, people will believe he feared our sacred blood pet that consumed the pills. If we win first place, it will achieve the same effect. He has already joined the competition, so whatever happens next is up to him, though nothing will change on our end either way. The voice was very confident. It was cold and resolute. Han Sen's communicator did not stop ringing, and the number of calls were overwhelming. They mostly came from good friends. Diligently, Han Sen answered them all, and each caller had contacted Han Sen to tell him about a new pet pill Dong Lin had created. They wanted to warn him. Han Sen appreciated their concerns and told them that he had already uncovered their ploy and that he was going to sort things out his way. Han Sen, if you want to quit, I won't mind. I don't expect you to uphold the deal. The last call he picked up was from Huangfu Pingqing. It's useless. If I back out now, Dong Lin can announce I feared their new creation and the results they achieve will be the same, Han Sen said coldly. Dong Lin was already advertising their creation, so they did not want to make any sort of deal with Han Senator. If they were willing to cut a deal, they wouldn't have gone ahead with their promotion. I have an idea, though. There are still a few matches to go before the finale. Before that, you will face a few sacred blood pets. You need to feign weakness against them and make it appear as if they are doing well in the fight. When you go against Dong Lin's pet and give it your all, and it does last quite a bit, it won't be so obvious or pronounced to spectators, Huangfu Pingqing said. Han Sen shook his head and said, all the bigwigs of the alliance are watching. They will stare at me intently, and that will make the pet pill even more famous. Then what do we do? Huangfu Pingqing had exhausted all her ideas for a solution, and she was feeling guilty. She felt partly responsible for the situation Han Sen had found himself in, as she was the one who invited him to the competition in the first place. Han Sen smiled and said, It's all right. I will go into the match and do what I always do. You will continue the fights? Huangfu Pingqing wasn't sure what he was implying. Han Sen did not thoroughly explain. All he told her next was, Yes, I will do as I have always done. There is no need for another solution. I am going to call Yinran and put her at ease too. After he hung up, he called Ji Yinran and spoke with her for a while. The matches were still ongoing, so after the call was done, Han Sen went to watch. The pangolin's matches were drawing quite a bit of attention, and everyone was keen to learn of how effective the new Dong Lin pet pills were. When the pangolin entered the battlegrounds, everyone looked at it. Its opponent this time was a sacred blood bear. The bear could not compete against the pangolin at all, and it wasn't long before its entire body was shredded with countless lacerations and other wounds. The pangolin just kept on attacking without reprieve, not giving the bear a single moment to fight back. In under half an hour, the master of the bear threw in the towel. He did not want his sacred blood pet to be destroyed. After this match, many people had nothing but praiseworthy things to say about the pangolin, and they all looked at it fondly. If it really was the effect of the pet pills, then the product truly did seem worth the cost. Of course, the pets it had challenged so far were not enough to convince the bigwigs. They were still anticipating the fight between the pangolin and the little angel. If it could not beat a super pet, then who would spend a fortune to purchase such medicine? People would spend their money on the pills in order to slay super creatures. If it wasn't effective enough, then it'd be pointless for people to purchase, and they would be better off sticking with a bunch of ordinary sacred blood pets. After Han Sen watched the pangolin's most recent fight, he nodded. The stuff Dong Lin had created really did impress Han Sen. Raising a pangolin was a good choice for their display, as well. Pangolins naturally had a high defense, and their shells could certainly block a few early strikes from a super creature. After the enhancements provided by the pet pills, their shells grew even stronger. Even the little angel would be unable to break it open. If it withstood a few of the little angel's attacks, the audience go wild, and the medicine would be perceived much more favorably. Not many humans had the means to block the attack of a super creature. A sacred blood pet like that would be useful in the pursuit of super creatures. Dong Lin must have researched the powers of the little angel to make this decision. They knew Han Sen would end up being backed into the corner he was currently in, but Han Sen just smiled as if he did not care about their rotten deeds. He already told Dong Lin he was prepared and had contingencies in place. The Chi family did plan their scheme nicely, but if they weren't willing to pay up, then Han Sen was not going to let them walk away scot-free. He'd rob them of every little benefit they sought to claim. The next time the little angel was brought onto the stage, she was poised to go up against another sacred blood pet. Many people focused all they could on this match, wanting to see how well Han Sen could deal with his new foe. They paid particular attention now that Dong Lin's scheme had been exposed. Everyone knew they had practically used Han Sen's little angel as a testbed to sell the pet pill. People knew Han Sen wasn't willing to back down after this, however. The little angel showed up like usual and crushed the sacred blood enemy. Upon seeing the little angel's performance, Chi Shuan sighed. He had been afraid Han Sen was going to make the little angel behave weakly, and when she went up against the pangolin, he'd obscure any advantage the pangolin had received from the medicine. Chi Shuan thought too much, however. Compared to his old man, he was still a noob. If Han Sen did this, the pet pill would only become more famous. After witnessing the little angel's behavior, everyone looked strange. There were many important figures there, and they knew the Chi family had been unable to make peace with Han Sen and were not planning to pay him. Everything the Chi family had planned was coming to fruition exactly as they had envisioned. This was the perfect way to exhibit the powers of their new pet pill, and doing it this way was far better than cooperating with Han Sen. But Han Sen was still making use of his little angel, and no one was sure what he might have been planning. The pangolin had performed extremely well in the past few matches, and it even managed to beat a berserk sacred blood pet. That shocked a lot of people. Although it did not dominate like the little angel did, it still performed admirably. Having seen how it dealt with such a foe, everyone turned their thoughts to how it might fare against a super pet. The little angel won every match along the way, and it was finally time for the final fight. Everyone was paying attention to this match. If the pangolin's performance was impressive, the medicine would be famous all across the alliance and would sell successfully at a ludicrous price. The time for the match to begin had arrived, and everyone stared at the stage in anticipation of the opponents to be revealed. Eagerly, they awaited the arrival of the little angel and the pangolin. Inside the waiting area, Han Sen looked relaxed. Dong Lin had calculated their strategy very well, and their pangolin was indeed a very strong creature. Their only mistake was picking the wrong opponent. If they had discussed business formally, Han Sen would not have opposed the idea of putting on a show in their favor to boost the sales and renown of their new pet pill product. With money to line his own pocket in return, they'd have both benefited. But Dong Lin was playing dirty, and they sought to manipulate Han's senator in response. Han Sen was going to play dirty and cruel, too. After Han Sen summoned the little angel, he did not immediately send her to the stadium to fight. Instead, he summoned a beast soul. A green shadow appeared in front of Han Sen, a phantom beast soul. This phantom-looking beast soul entered the little angel's body and possessed her. The little angel's body did not change very much, save that her eyes now flickered with a green flame. Han Sen had obtained this beast soul after defeating the Steel Knight King, and it was a humanoid pet-possessive beast soul. Just like any other super pet armor, only pets could make use of it. This one was restricted to armoring humanoid pets only. After Han Sen first got it, he fed it a black crystal. Over time, it slowly evolved into a berserk super beast soul. Perhaps the Chi family was unlucky, or perhaps the White Deer's luck had already provided a boon to Han Sen, but the beast's soul had only just finished evolving the night before. Now that it had possessed the little angel, and she had received the buffs from the Steel Knight King, her power increased by a large amount. Qixuan, you chose not to talk this out, and now you must suffer the consequences. Han Sen spoke aloud to himself, and then he told the little angel to enter the stadium. The pangolin was already there waiting. With Han Sen's short delay, people began to talk. Did Han Sen give up? No way. That means everything will end up in the Qi family's favor. If he doesn't give up and gets destroyed by the pangolin, won't things end up even worse? I hope he doesn't quit. If that pill works as advertised, then fighting super creatures should be considerably easier. As people discussed amongst themselves, a beautiful angel emerged. Immediately, everyone's attention was ensnared and their excitement erupted. What will Han Sen do? Look at the pangolin. I don't think the little angel can finish it off quick. Fighting as he has been would play right into the Qi family's hands, Son of Heaven said. He was speaking to Ningyu. The Qi family won't achieve what they've planned with this charade. Ningyu coldly responded. Why not? I viewed the analysis of the pangolin, and it is projected to withstand a few strikes. Son of Heaven was quite confused. Ningyu smiled and said, that intel is fair. I'll give you that. But you should look into people's hearts. There are many things in this world we are yet to understand, and merely reading data would have you believe everything is absolute and fixed. I can assure you they are not. If you can read a person's heart, even if you don't know anything else, you can foresee the true results. I lack the patience you do, I am afraid. Son of Heaven gave a wry smile. It's fine. We are still young, and it is fortunate for us to be born in such a good era. Many opportunities lie before us, and it is simply our task to grab a hold of them and see where they lead. Are you okay? It's fine. I am used to it. Keep an eye on the field. The match should begin soon. We wouldn't want to miss it. Ningyu shook her head and looked at the little angel. Qixuan, upon seeing the little angel arrive, became ecstatic. Even if the little angel had not shown, they were fixed to walk away a wealthier family. The only negative to a no-show would be a lack of oomph to underscore their latest work. After the countdown, the little angel wasted no time and swung her sword towards the pangolin. As she did this, Qixuan clenched his fists tight. The era defined by the Qi family is coming. All of them stared at the little angel, anticipating the crazy fight to come. The shell was like black metal, and it looked extremely sturdy. But under the sheer force that drove the little angel's great sword, it was like tofu. Her sword sundered the shell like a hot knife through butter. And it did not stop there. The sword went on to slice the entire creature in two. In less than a second, the pangolin was hewn in half. Blood painted the arena as the body immediately decomposed. Qixuan's smile froze as his mind was left barren of even a single composed thought. Far away, in Donglin, a middle-aged man witnessed this. The hand that held his teacup suddenly began to tremble. The cup fell to the ground, spilling its contents everywhere. The middle-aged man lost it completely. As he stared at the screen, he screamed, "Impossible!"
Impossible.
Many bigwigs of the Alliance were shocked and actually looked disappointed. They felt strange. More than anything, they were disappointed in the latest product created by the Qi family. It was touted as the must-have item for facing off against super creatures, yet it had just been destroyed by a super pet in an instant. The pet pills did not seem to be as useful as they had believed them to be, and their hopes of slaying super creatures were brought to an abrupt end. The funny thing was, the Qi family had done something very dumb. They had given out many grand prizes, and the sacred blood pet they raised themselves was killed. Their advertisements and promotions backfired. Everyone knew pet pills could make pet beast souls stronger, but regardless of how strong they were, they could not escape the shackles of being a sacred blood pet. They could still get one hit killed by a super creature, so their purchase and subsequent usage was pointless. After a temporary silence, the applause came in slow like the first droplets of rain before a storm. Then, cheering and hurraying erupted from every corner of the stadium. Super pets are overpowered. They really are much stronger than sacred blood pets. It is no wonder it is titled a super pet. They are so cool. They one-hit kill everything. I was hoping to see the pangolin last longer than that. I can only suppose my hopes were misplaced. Haha, they had it coming. Them old cheese sure think they're powerful, but all they ended up doing was inciting the wrath and ire of Han Senator. He didn't kill a single pet earlier, but here, he made sure to make his feelings known. Chi Xiuwen's face had been robbed of all color, and he gave out the prizes, embarrassed. For the life of him, he could not figure out how he had lost, and he was so ashamed he almost fainted. He knew he had screwed up, thinking the pet pills would be enough to make the Chi family famous. All he had done was send them straight to hell. Sure, the pet pills could aid the family's development, but after this, that development would be far slower. Haha, that is so funny. Why would the Chi family even do all this? Their pet pills really were effective, and things would have turned out much better for them if they had instead just come and hired you to do something promotional. Huang Fu Pingqing met with Han Sen to receive her portion of the beast pills they had agreed on. She smiled and continued by saying, I'm afraid the price of the pet pills will be significantly reduced now. Han Sen shrugged his shoulders and said, Yep, and there's nothing I can do now. I'm an easy person to talk to, so I'm perplexed by their hesitation to consult me. If the person in Dong Lin heard you talk like that, he'd be furious. Huang Fu Pingqing said, with the same vibrant smile. Well, it doesn't matter to me. I have the goodies, and that's all I ever wanted. Provoking them any further would be unnecessary. Han Sen couldn't be bothered doing something that would not directly benefit him. He didn't stay much longer after the event, and after bidding farewell to his mother and father-in-law, he returned to camp. Aside from the beast pills he gave to Huang Fu Pingqing, he also received a few exclusive medicines that were not available for sale. After reaching camp, he entered the sanctuary so he could feed some of the new medicine to the silver fox and see if they helped. Han Sen brought the medicine to Moment's shelter, but was startled to find everyone absent. He called out for the missing creatures, but he received no response. Believing something bad to have happened, he used his Dongxian aura to scan the area. Eventually, he found them all gathered in the plaza. What are you guys doing here? Han Sen asked as he ran into the plaza. He saw that Moment Queen, the silver fox, and the rest were in the middle of the plaza observing something. There is a tree growing here, Moment Queen told Han Sen in a strange, captivated tone. What is so special about a tree growing? Does its slow growth make for a fascinating watch? Han Sen continued walking closer, and as he went he said, You guys are super creatures. How can you not know anything about trees? You guys must be dumber than planks. Han Sen approached the silver fox and then saw what had caught their attention. A small tree had taken root between the cobblestones. When Han Sen saw it, he froze. His face looked even worse than the silver fox and Moment Queen's did. How did this tree come to be? Han Sen struggled to ask, as his trembling finger pointed towards the tree. The tree was only 2 feet tall by now, but it was growing healthily. With it being so small, it almost looked like a bonsai. The entire tree was like perfectly sculpted green jade. Each and every leaf was stunning. What surprised Han Sen the most was the presence of 6 fruit growing amongst its leaves. For fruit to grow on a tree was nothing outstanding, but these weren't your average fruits. They were in the shape of miniature treasure chests. They were gold and adorned with a number of distinct, indiscernible carvings. The tree was luxurious, and a strong life force crackled from it. It emitted some form of holy aura, which manifested in a white mist that veiled the tree. It was a curious sight, a green jade tree with golden chests. Whoever saw such a thing would need to pinch themselves. Han Sen knew that it wasn't some created art piece, it was something natural and alive. The many gold chests were the fruit, and Han Sen could see they were very lively. Moment Queen shook her head and said, We don't know. When we came out here this morning, it was just here. We haven't a clue when it began to grow. When we saw the tree, Little White was next to it. Moment Queen then added, as if she just remembered something. And as she said this, she pointed towards the white deer. Han Sen was pretty pleased at hearing this. He approached the deer, held it, and kissed its head. He then merrily said to it, Little White, you are awesome. You really are a lucky beast. You've only been here for a few days, but already you have bequeathed me treasure. I love you. The white deer just stood there without eliciting any reaction or emotions. Little Silver, on the other hand, looked incredibly mad. It leapt onto the deer's head and ruffled its fur. The silver fox was consumed with envy, as it detested the times Han Sen was affectionate with other creatures. Han Sen then picked up the silver fox in his hands and returned to observe the jade gold tree. The energy it possessed was like that of a super creature. Perhaps it was like that cactus or peach tree. When the tree grew larger, perhaps the 6 chests would yield a greater benefit than the peaches had. Can I eat the gold chest fruit thingies? Or are they something I can open? Perhaps there are creatures inside? Han Sen thought to himself. After a period of observation, he gave up trying to guess the nature of the mysterious tree. Instead, he turned to talk to Moment Queen. He asked, "Can you tell me anything about this tree?" "Not really. The only thing I know for sure is that this isn't normal. If these gold chests do mature, however, they should present something valuable," Moment Queen replied, with her eyes still fixed on the golden fruit. "Even I know that." "Of course they'll yield something good," Han Sen said, thinking Moment Queen had not elucidated a single thing to him. But Moment Queen shook her head and said, "I mean, treasure like this is very similar to the empty vine. What's more, it will draw the attention of many super creatures. I am not sure if we can keep it. We cannot beat the Devil Blood King, and if he does bring his army of super creatures to attack, I do not believe we can withstand such a siege."
Han Sen frose.
Amidst his joy, he hadn't considered this possibility. Hearing Moment Queen tell him this, he believed that the possibility she proposed was quite realistic. That would be a big problem, wouldn't it? But if this tree has grown in one of my shelters, then nothing can deny it belongs to Han. I cannot allow others to intrude and steal what is rightfully mine, Han Sen said, with obvious greed. With the power we have at our disposal, I don't think so. I'd say you're wrong. Moment Queen emptied a bucket of cold water on the blazing fires of Han Sen's greed-fueled hopes. "Well, don't you worry your little mind. I have an idea. Tell me, when do you expect the gold chest fruit to mature?" Han Sen asked, as he looked over at the chests once more. "Judging by the rate and pattern of its current growth, I would estimate another 2 to 3 months, Moment Queen said. 2 to 3 months, huh?
Han Sen frov ned.
Even he knew keeping claim to the jade gold tree would be difficult. Still, it did not quell his excitement for the fruit. Feverishly, he pondered what sort of treasures might await inside. It would take a long time for the jade gold tree to mature, so there was no rush right now. Han Sen examined the pills he had won, and taking one of each, he lined them up before the silver fox and his other pets to see if they were interested. When the fairy saw the medicine, one in particular caught her eye. But just as she was about to grab it, the silver fox gobbled it up. The little fairy had no choice but to select another pill to swallow. Han Sen was surprised to see it was the latest pet pill the silver fox and the fairy decided to go after first. Han Sen pulled out another pet pill to gauge how much they desired it. All too quickly, the silver fox and fairy wrestled with each other for it. Han Sen had received 100 pet pills, so he decided to give one to each of his pets. Spirits weren't keen on pet pills, and the same applied to the little angel. Big Black and Small Black really loved the pills, too. But unfortunately, 100 was not enough, and they ate them all. There was no effect. It looks like the pills are more desirable than I thought. Ethics aside, the Dong Lin Company is fairly amazing. I wonder what materials compose the pills, since they seem to work for both genuine pets and the creatures that adhere to my command here in the shelter. Han Sen knew he had destroyed any enthusiasm that had been built for the pet pills, but it was going to be sold no matter what. However, due to their blundered promotional campaign, the price of the pills was sure to be lower to start off with. It would eventually rise in the future, when more and more people became aware of how effective the medicine was. It looks like I need to stock up on some pet pills while the going is good. Han Sen then thought about how he might buy a large number of pet pills for the lowest price possible. It was worth getting them to feed his pets. Han Sen prepared to visit the Alliance, trying to figure out where he could buy a large number of them. But when Han Sen arrived, he arrived to shocking news. Angel Gene had killed a super creature in the Second God Sanctuary and obtained a life Geno essence. They also began selling their high-tier Angel Gene fluid. For evolvers who had a fitness level of over 100, They could use it to obtain a temporary boost of strength that lasted 2 hours. The drawback of subsequent weakness was also made known, but there was no permanent damage. And after appropriate rest, users would be right as rain. With the technology of the Alliance, all users would have to do was rest in their recovery baths for a few days. If the user had already unlocked their first gene lock, their fitness would be boosted to a level that almost rivaled a celestial being. They would become incredibly powerful, and the effects would last far longer. Angel Gene used this fluid to slay a super creature, and after they did, they used the Life Geno Essence as a promotional item to advocate the effectiveness of their product. Right now, Angel Gene was number 1 when it came to the needs of evolvers. Their juice could also work for surpassers, although it wasn't as effective. The Angel Gene fluid announcement rocked the entire Alliance, and it had most certainly ushered in a new era for humanity. The sales were off to a flying start, and it quickly made Angel Gene a household name within the Alliance. The Zhao family were depicted as gods, and everyone could not stop talking about their Angel Gene fluid. This entire event had a grand effect. The product, however, was difficult to mass-produce. As a result, it was extremely expensive. Angel Gene did have a range of products suited for those who lacked the required money, suitable for the average evolver. That being said, its effectiveness was far worse. The low-tier Angel Gene fluid was their main product, though. Angel Gene also announced the primary ingredients that composed the juice, and one of them was raw Shura blood. It was impossible for technology to recreate the properties of such blood. But this also meant humanity could not make peace with the Shura. For continued production of the fluid, the war would have to go on. Some people opposed the Angel Gene fluid, but they were too few, and their voices were drowned out by the rest, who clamored for power above all else. The Angel Gene fluid bandwagon did not seem likely to stop, and the repercussions of its existence were surely going to be felt across the universe. Han Sen wished he could murder everyone in the Zhao family, but he did admire the power Zhao 7th possessed. Angel Gene fluid really was a breakthrough product. Although the Ji family had obtained the Angel Gene fluid off Han Sen a while ago, they had not focused on the Geno business enough. As a result, they were unable to discover the ingredients. But Han Sen could not blame them. The Qi family operated in the same realm, and when they were given the Angel Gene fluid, they couldn't make heads or tails of its ingredients, either. The Qi family had suffered the most damage, however. After the pet pills, they believed they would become even more famous, but their advertising ploy went awry. As if that wasn't damaging enough, the Zhao family had now announced their humanity-changing Angel Gene fluid. Angel Gene fluid could immediately increase your power, so who would want to spend more money and time on raising pets that weren't very useful, anyway? They had mass-produced a vast amount of pet pills, prepared to sell them all. But now, they had a horde of them sitting on store shelves, unable to be moved. Their business chain broke, depleting their cash reserves. Han Sen was not too concerned about Angel Gene fluid, though. After all, the high-tier variant required Shura blood, and that was a precious commodity. Besides, when humans used a high-tier angel fluid, their bodies would not be pure. And they could not solo a super creature. Even with many people making use of the juice, it'd still be difficult to slay a super creature. But still, it was indeed an all-round boost to the development of humanity's ascension and the speed of their evolution. What Han Sen was most interested in right now, however, was the Qi family's pet pills. The Zhao family's Angel Gene fluid still had a number of issues with it. It wouldn't be effective enough until they managed to sort out the side effects and make it last longer. Plus, they needed the blood of royal Shuras. Unless they found a way to artificially create a compound that provided the same benefits, it would not be effective in the long term. Pet pills were different, though. Although their effects were not immediate, their slow boil of improvement was more likely to benefit humanity in the long term. After Han Sen learned of the Qi family's troubles, he planned to buy out their unmovable surplus. They needed the money, after all. It was only a matter of time before humans discovered how effective and useful the pills actually were. And once they did, the price was sure to skyrocket. Han Sen did not want to visit the Qi family himself, so he asked Ji Ruozhen to buy the pills for him. He also explained to him the likely benefits the pills would provide humanity in the future. Ji Ruozhen's thoughts aligned with Han Sen's own. He had convened a family meeting earlier, in the hopes of asking the family whether, or not they should buy all the pet pills produced by the Qi family. But everyone present was keener on the prospects presented by Angel Gene Fluid, and they disregarded what Ji Ruojian told them. He was unable to convince the others in the family. Ji Ruojian instead used his own money to purchase as many pills as possible. Han Sen himself sold everything he did not need, and used the money he amassed to buy as much of the Qi family's stock of pills as he could. Because the Qi family had overstocked, unaware of the promotional blunder that was waiting to happen, they were facing bankruptcy. They had spent a fortune on ingredients for future production of the pills, but the low sales put a large financial strain on the family. To regain as much of their capital as possible, they settled for setting the selling price of the pills under their production cost and selling at a loss. Now that Ji Ruojian was buying so many, the Qi family was extremely grateful. After all, a lot of money was going Angel Gene's way instead. Few had the money to help the Qi family, especially when competing with Angel Gene. The help Ji Ruojian lent the Qi family was massive. Han Sen was the one funding most of the purchases, however. Ji Ruojian only stood in to make the transactions and deal with the business. And as this was happening, Han Sen spent a lot of time in the sanctuary, wondering how he might protect the Jade Gold Tree. After much deliberation, Han Sen came to the conclusion he would not be able to protect it from a siege. Therefore, he thought about striking out against the Devil Blood King first. He wagered that offense, at a time like this, would be the best defense. Not bad. But how are you going to draw the super creatures out of the Devil Blood shelter? Although Moment Queen had faith in the plan working, the super creatures were inside the shelter, and there was no way Han Sen could just wander in. If they couldn't be drawn out, any preparation they now made would all be for naught. Drawing them out will not be difficult, provided I can be as fleet of foot as I need to be.
Han Sen låg head.
He was thinking of calling upon Wang Yuhang. To draw super creatures away, he figured they would have no choice but to rely on him. It was fortunate Wang Yuhang had been captured by the Zhao family not too long ago. Finding him again in the surrounding regions would be much easier now. When he did find Wang Yuhang again, he asked him whether or not he wanted to hunt super creatures with him. Super creatures? They are not compared to the strength and zeal I command these days. I will lay waste to aught that comes our way. Wang Yuhang's chest was puffed in a display of cockiness. Han Sen was surprised at Wang Yuhang's behavior and asked, "Little uncle, since when did you become so brave?" "Teehee, I will not cloak the fawn of my bravery. See here, this remedy I possess?" As he said this, he pulled a metal box out of his pack. Inside it, there were 2 vials of a certain concoction. Angel Gene Fluid? Han Sen remembered what they looked like. Teehee, the higher tier variant, as well. You can cast elemental powers like projectiles with these nifty little potions, Wang Yuhang said. Where did you get it from? Han Sen was surprised. They were very popular, and many people clamored for them. But with the limited amount of blood available for their creation, their stock was low. Wang Yuhang was by no means a famous evolver, so the fact that he owned 2 was startling. I bought them. You would be silly to believe the Zhao family would grace the magnificence of myself with these, free of charge. Wang Yuhang put away the vials and continued with a thump of his chest. So, where is this place you speak of? For whatever monstrous devilry challenges you, I shall slay unwaveringly. Oh, so it's good that I can depend on you.
Han Sen smiled.
Wang Yuhang was very confident right now, so it was the perfect time to bring him to the Devil Blood shelter. If it were any other day, he would most likely refuse to come. There were indeed far too many super creatures residing there, and with his bad luck, it had caused a number of troubles. The Angel Gene Fluid had not only boosted his courage, but when they engaged the monsters they'd fight there, the juice might very well save his life. They both traveled north towards the Devil Blood shelter. Wang Yuhang's confidence had yet to waver, and he was visibly firm in the comfort provided by his ownership of the Angel Gene Fluid. Han Sen merely hoped his cockiness would not get the better of him. When it came to fighting super creatures, he could still be destroyed. The Devil Blood shelter was like a castle, and it was smaller than Han Sen had imagined it to be. It did look haunted, however. It wasn't as elegant and holy looking as Moment Shelter. Did you not make mention of a trial of frightening fury? Pa, look hither. I, all by my lonesome, will engage this entire eerie estate solo. After speaking, Wang Yuhang retrieved his injector and prepared to inject himself with one vial of the angel gene fluid. Seeing that the shelter was not too big, he did not believe anything powerful could reside within. Han Sen grabbed his hand, however. He said, "I won't stop you from killing anything, but I think it would be best if we did some reconnaissance first.
Fine.
I'll allow the wretches that reside within a couple more minutes to cling to the fleeting, miserable excuses they deem as lives." Wang Yuhang put away the injector. When Han Sen and Wang Yuhang neared the shelter, the latter's face turned pale. The heroism that had previously driven Wang Yuhang dribbled away. Above the Devil Blood shelter, a large dragon could be seen flying. A strange bird was also up there. There were many vile creatures outside the gates, including something like a minotaur. Half an hour later, they had positively identified 5 different super creatures. God knew how many more resided within the shelter. "Little uncle, your opportunity has arrived. Do you want to go out there and kill them now?" Han Sen smiled at Wang Yuhang, whose face was still pale. When he heard what Han Sen had asked him, he jumped and said, "Is it my death that you earnestly desire? The number of creatures there are too many, and to attempt an infiltration would be suicide. I am not fond of the concept of following you inside merely to die. We cannot rush in, you are right, but we can draw a few of them away. Aren't you quite proficient in that?"
Han Sen låg head.
Wang Yuhang's face turned bitter and he said, "You are well aware of how unfortunate I can be. If I venture any nearer to this sordid hellhole, every monster in the vicinity will lust for my blood and come at me like hounds. Think of the variety of grisly deaths I might end up suffering. Don't you have the angel gene fluid?" "There is nothing to be afraid of," Han Sen said. "I spent every last penny I possessed on obtaining these delightful solutions, and I bought them so that I might slay super creatures. I hadn't planned on using them just so I could run away," Wang Yuhang said. "Little uncle, it won't work. So, how about you go and draw them out? For any super creature we kill, you'll get 60% of the shares. Of the life geno essences we sell, I'll only receive 40%. If there are beast souls, you get first pick." Han Sen conjured a wide array of different temptations for Wang Yuhang. Killing the super creatures was what was most important, and Han Sen did not care too much about the rewards. There would likely be more first generations inside there. Anyway, if that was the case, Han Sen wouldn't mind giving them to Wang Yuhang at all. "Are you sure?" Wang Yuhang's eyes suddenly sparkled. "When have I ever lied to you?" Han Sen said, with a smug and righteous look. "No, I want 70%, and all the beast souls we receive will be mine," Wang Yuhang said. "Okay."
Han Sen agreed.
"Why do I always bend over backwards if it means securing a coin or two? I will die for this money, I tell you." Wang Yuhang was speaking to himself, doing his best to inspire a return of confidence. "Little uncle, what you have just said is not down to luck. If you want to make an inspirational speech, don't tell yourself you are going to die."
Han Sen låg head.
Wang Yuhang replied, "Oh yes, that is correct. I am going to waltz into that mangled hive of doom and tango out with vast riches I can use to woo a woman and make her my wife. If you are listening, God, disregard what I said earlier." Wang Yuhang started to leg it forward, but Han Sen pulled him back and said, "Whoa, don't rush. We should be extra sure of what we're walking into here. Fire an arrow from afar and then run. You'll need as much distance as you can get." "Oh yes, of course. I am not an imbecile, I'll have you know. I am an aged warrior, one who has far more experience than you in such arts." Wang Yuhang rolled his eyes, and then started his approach from the nearby stands of trees. He slithered around like a snake doing the mamba, and when he was in firing range, fired an arrow towards the minotaur. When the arrow took flight, he didn't wait to see if he had struck his desired target. As soon as the arrow loosed, he ran off quicker than a spooked bunny.
Han Sen frose in disbelief.
He had missed, and the minotaur was none the wiser. But just as Han Sen believed Wang Yuhang to have failed, the ground seemed to quake and move. A rocky golem picked itself up out of the mud. Catching sight of the human who had disturbed its slumber, it cried out and chased after Wang Yuhang. This also spooked the minotaur, and after propping its spear, it ran after Wang Yuhang as well. The bird in the sky dive-bombed in his direction, with its razor eyes peering at its troublesome prey. Not bad. Han Sen sighed with relief. The arrow had totally missed its target, but even despite that, he had managed to draw the ire of at least 3 super creatures. Seeing Wang Yuhang about to lose his lead and succumb to the creatures that hounded him, Han Sen stealthily caught up. Han Sen did not dare attack just yet, as they were too close to the Devil Blood shelter. The creatures inside the shelter, if they were made aware of the trouble outside, would send out reinforcements before he'd be able to slay even just one. Escape from such a situation would be no trivial task. "Bossman, save me!" Wang Yuhang called out at the top of his lungs when he caught a glimpse of the manic bird that was descending upon him. It was still too soon to do anything, however. To avoid his presence being known, Han Sen just continued to follow, ignoring Wang Yuhang's plight. They still needed to go further before doing anything. Wang Yuhang was a proficient kiter, but even his speed could not outpace a super creature. Eventually, the bird did indeed catch up. It twirled its lethal talons in the air to cast bladed gusts of wind after him. The rocky giant, at the same time, threw its boulder fist into the earth and created a large hole. As this was happening, the Minotaur swung its spear to cast a fireball towards Wang Yuhang. Quite clearly, he was now in danger. "Bossman, save me. I will not last much longer. I beseech your immediate aid." This entire ordeal was a maniacal concoction of your own twisted mind. "You tricked me into this." "Arg!" Wang Yuhang cried out, pitiably. The razor wind sliced his arm, drawing an alarming cascade of blood. The fireball caught his clothes on fire, which set him ablaze. Through the fire and blood, he was being pursued by 3 super creatures. And now, more than ever, he truly was in danger. His life was at risk. But still, Han Sen ignored his cries for aid. He expected Wang Yuhang to have used his angel gene fluid by now, but he hadn't. Han Sen thought it was typical of the cheap and stingy bastard he thought he was. They were still too close to the shelter. Attacking now would foil his plans of infiltration, and as Wang Yuhang was still alive and able to scream and shout just fine, he'd let him be chased for a while longer. When Wang Yuhang noticed his cries for help being ignored by Han Sen, he acknowledged the danger he was in. He realized that he might well and truly die where he was. With great regret, he knew what he had to do. He pulled out his injector and a vial of angel gene fluid and gave himself a shot of the super juice. As Wang Yuhang ran, his eyes turned red. A horn grew out of his forehead, and his speed and agility increased. He was still under the cruel pursuit of 3 super creatures, but at least he wasn't suffering anymore. Managing to flee their wrath with greater ease, he reached the cover of the forest much sooner. He should have done that far sooner. Being stingy at a time like this is a surefire way to reach an early grave. Han Sen despised his hesitance. Wang Yuhang's mobility was admirable as he attempted to escape. It was quite remarkable, watching him flee. Han Sen couldn't help comparing it to a salmon leaping upstream with unpredictable movements. Still, it wasn't anywhere near the dexterity one could exert when making use of Heavenly Go. Impressed by what he saw, Han Sen used his Dongxian aura to track his movements. Surprisingly, he found it difficult to predict what he'd do next. He had mustered a very strange manner of flight. Every time Han Sen predicted a movement, he'd be wrong. But he didn't think Wang Yuhang moved the way he did consciously, and it was more like he was making up his movements as he went. Each step was random, but despite that, the results were good. Perhaps it wasn't that it was entirely inferior to Heavenly Go, it was just different. Heavenly Go engaged your intelligence and abilities of prediction, in which you thought of where to move next before committing a step. Wang Yuhang was just moving, simple as that. He did whatever entered his mind, to surprisingly decent results. His ability to move with such recklessness and survive almost made Han Sen reconsider whether he had good luck or bad luck. "Han Sen, I beseech your aid once more. Death follows me at a very near distance. It mocks me. It tells me I will be in his company very soon if you do not help me right now." Wang Yuhang continued to scream. By now, he had been running for over an hour, and the red of his eyes began to fade. The size of his horn reduced. The benefits of his angel gene fluid were quickly wearing away, and he wouldn't last much longer. Seeing Wang Yuhang reach a valley, Han Sen thought it was time. He summoned Moment Queen and the little angel, and commanded them to tackle a super creature each. He himself went to engage the Minotaur. Moment Queen went up against the rock golem, and he commanded her to use speed to kite it away while he kite the Minotaur. Han Sen still depended on his little angel more than anything. She was currently possessed by the Steel Knight King, which made her stronger than the average super creature. It made her more reliable to him now, as well. With her power, she'd be able to easily slay the wind elemental bird. And as suspected, the little angel did not disappoint Han's senator within a few moments of fighting. She had covered the bird's back with a number of lacerations and wounds. A whirlwind of loose feathers and blood formed in the sky as the bird struggled against its new foe. It would be killed very soon. The strange bird cawed to the skies, as if it were sending an SOS signal to the nearby shelter. And when it did this, Han Sen's eyes looked murderous. His flaming Rex spike smacked into the Minotaur's spear, like two geysers of fire colliding. Han Sen was knocked back 2 steps, not as strong as the Minotaur. The silver fox, who was perched on Han Sen's shoulder, suddenly opened its mouth and fired a thunderbolt at the Minotaur. Boom! The advantage the Minotaur had just gained on Han Sen quickly disappeared. As the Minotaur was unable to follow up with an additional attack, the silver fox saved its master by delivering an unavoidable bolt of lightning to the Minotaur. Roar! The Minotaur was electrified. Its fur and bushy mane stood up on ends, starched. Not wasting a second, Han Sen followed up with a cruel smack to its head. Pang! The Minotaur's head gushed blood, and it roared more and more as it tried to fight back. But the silver fox was not done yet, and it spat more bolts of lightning towards the beast until it writhed around on the ground in a state of paralysis. The specific silver lightning the silver fox was casting did not seem particularly damaging, but it was effective at paralyzing enemies. The Minotaur couldn't move at all, and Han Sen, again, took the opportunity to strike the monster's head. Kill, kill, kill. With the silver fox by his side, Han Sen didn't even have to try to defend himself. He swung the flaming Rex spike down on the Minotaur like mad, as if it were a punching bag. It bled horrifically, and all it could do was shriek helplessly. The body of the Minotaur was tough, however. Although he had managed to draw blood, it wasn't nearly enough damage to kill the creature. Even after a dozen hits, he knew he'd have to deal far more. But then, multiple life forces began to emerge from the Devil Blood shelter. "Little uncle, go now. I will rendezvous with you at the Black Peak," Han Sen barked to Wang Yuhang. He was afraid that if the effects of the angel gene fluid wore off, the man would be so weak he'd be unable to even run. Without hesitation, Wang Yuhang took off. As Wang Yuhang ran, Han Sen beat the Minotaur repeatedly with his flaming Rex spike. It was a brutal scene, as the squishy mound of the writhing Minotaur streamed with blood. Just as this was happening, Little Angel cleaved the strange wind element bird in half. Then, she swooped down and hewed the Minotaur's head off its body. Super creature Windhawk killed.
No beast soul gun.
The flesh of this creature is inedible, but you may harvest its life geno-essence. Consume its life geno-essence to gain 0 to 10 super geno points randomly. Super creature Flaming Minotaur killed.
No beast soul gun.
The flesh of this creature is inedible, but you may harvest its life geno-essence. Consume its life geno-essence to gain 0 to 10 super geno points randomly. The two announcements overlapped. Han Sen knew they were first-generation super creatures, so he wasn't too surprised at the results. Quickly, he gathered the 2 life geno-essences and ran away. The scary presences that were coming from the Devil Blood shelter was not far behind. Knowing that he could not deal with the golem, he disappeared in his flight towards the mountains. The spooky presences had now reached where the 2 super creatures fell. They cried out, unable to catch up with Han Sen. Eventually, Han Sen reached the Black Peak and met up with Wang Yuhang. "How fared the battle? Did you acquire beast souls?" Wang Yuhang ran up to ask, excitedly. He wanted a super beast soul for himself very badly. I only managed to get these 2 life geno essences, so you can take them. Wang Yuhang was filled with mixed emotions, receiving this response. He hadn't received a beast soul like he wanted, but he got not 1 but 2 life geno essences. Don't be sad, little uncle. When you recover, we can try that again. Beast souls are bound to pop up sooner or later. How long will you need to rest? Han Sen looked at Wang Yuhang as he spoke. It will take me at least 6 days. Wang Yuhang looked across his own, weakened body and smiled wryly. He could hardly stand, following the side effects of using the angel gene fluid. He was in a slightly worse condition now, however, due to his stinginess. He had received multiple lesions and bruises, sustaining quite a bit of damage before using the liquid. Han Sen was going to use his holy light to heal Wang Yuhang, but the silver fox suddenly spit out silver lightning towards the man. Arg! Wang Yuhang was electrified, and the power sent him flying through the air. Amidst the blood-curdling screams, Han Sen was shocked at the silver fox's behavior. The silver fox had never attacked a human before unless provoked, so why would it attack Wang Yuhang? Had the uncle's bad luck made a new breakthrough? But then, quickly, Han Sen noticed something. Even though Wang Yuhang was electrified, his wounds began to heal. Ever since the silver fox ate the transparent little fish, its lightning had seemed to behave differently. It was different from before, and it was most certainly strange for the lightning attacks to simultaneously heal and inflict pain. The silver fox spat out more silver lightning towards Wang Yuhang, and the wounds started to heal very fast. But seeing him electrified, thrown into visible pain, writhing, and screaming, was an unnerving scene that sent a chill down Han Sen's spine. In the future, Han Sen thought he'd stick to his holy light and no longer trouble the silver fox. But when the silver fox stopped shooting its electricity, Wang Yuhang lay on the ground like a crumpled mess. He jumped back up and started running towards the silver fox in a bid to attack, screaming, "You animal! You are dead!" Wang Yuhang had tears in his eyes, as if he had been humiliated. The pain brought by the silver lightning must have been unfathomable. Seeing Wang Yuhang's face, Han Sen decided it would be best to never allow the silver fox to heal him again. Halfway through his run towards the silver fox, the little creature sent out another beam of silver lightning to shock Wang Yuhang. The body sizzled and smoked, as tufts of hair were singed and fell to the ground. His skin turned black. This lightning strike was different. It was purely destructive, and it did not possess a single glimmer of a remedial desire. Wang Yuhang, following his electrocution, was charred like charcoal. Smoke arose from his head, and yet the silver fox did not relent. It spat out even more bolts of lightning. This time, Wang Yuhang's body began to return to its original color as if he were healing. Just as he was healed, Wang Yuhang became a recipient of more destructive lightning. And then, with his skin like scorched wood, he was healed by another remedial bolt. Han Sen wasn't sure what to think. He was almost scared, and as he watched what was going on, he vowed to himself never to mistreat the silver fox and incite its ire. "Foxmaster, I was wrong. Please, forgive my slight." Wang Yuhang chugged out those strained words in pain. Amidst his screams, brought on by the frequent electrocutions, those were the only words he managed to gasp out. Desperately, he tried to kowtow before the silver fox. The silver fox lifted its head elegantly and then leapt back onto Han Sen's shoulders. It seemed to have forgiven Wang Yuhang's sudden disrespect. Wang Yuhang, however, swore he would do whatever it took to eliminate the silver fox. One day, he'd destroy the little creature. And as this desire took root in his heart, his exterior only presented a pretty smile to the silver fox, like that of a lady. The silver fox's healing power was most certainly different than other creatures Han Sen had encountered. And to his surprise, after Wang Yuhang was electrified, he was no longer in his weak, post-angel gene fluid state. He was energized, the same as usual. They waited the night out together, and on the next day, they returned to Devil Blood Shelter. But this time, they approached from another side and looked for the perfect opportunity to draw out more super creatures. Wang Yuhang had only one more vial of angel gene fluid left, so he'd have to use it sparingly. Therefore, Han Sen opted for a more careful route this time, and only aimed to attract one or two powerful super creatures. In the meantime, Wang Yuhang would be sidelined a good distance away, ready for the pull, lest his poor luck ruin Han Sen's precision. Little uncle, any idea on how I can draw them out? Han Sen crouched low behind a rock, pointing towards a creature that stood along the ramparts of Devil Blood Shelter. Han Sen used his Devil Eye mask to get a proper look at it. The super creature had the strongest life force he had seen yet, and it could very well have been a second-generation super creature. It was quite far from him, but he didn't dare get any closer. The limited range was what made his Dongxian aura ineffective. And for what reason would you select that brute? Why not the golem? Wang Yuhang asked, looking at the super creature with a confused expression. The super creature was a silver-white ape. It was a 3-meter-tall beast with silver fur. Its muscles were pronounced, glistening like brushed steel. It looked tremendously powerful. That being said, its body looked clumsy. It moved quickly with shining eyes, and the ears were weirdly curled, like snails. I have a feeling it will drop us a beast soul.
Han Sen låg head.
And might you explain to me how you are able to deduce such a thing? Wang Yuhang balked, with his eyes wide open. The silver ape didn't look as if it would drop a beast's soul, no matter which way he viewed it. Do you have any ideas or not?
Han Sen asked.
To attract Brutus? That shan't be a problem. Wang Yuhang looked around and nodded an affirmative. In that case, I will leave it to you. Han Sen, with the silver fox in tow, sneaked away in preparation for their cooperative action. Wang Yuhang did not use an arrow this time. Instead, he merely came out from behind the rocks and shouted in the direction of Devil Blood Shelter, "You there, monkey boy? Over here." His call garnered much attention, and the silver ape looked over in his direction. Wang Yuhang reached out his arm and presented a fist. Slowly, he lifted his middle finger. In the next second, the thumping of a chest and a frightening roar sounded. The silver ape cried out to the sky, and the dragon joined in. Next the golem did, too. They all screamed at their latest intruder with bloodlust. And then there were more. Oh my days. This is far too much. Wang Yuhang was shocked by the sudden additions to his fan club, and he wasted no time in running away. His stinginess was not an issue this time, either, and so he injected himself with the angel gene fluid immediately. Han Sen saw 10 super creatures chasing after Wang Yuhang, and it shocked even him. His eyes stared at his fleeing companion with wide eyes, unsure of whether or not the two would survive whatever battle was about to occur. Han Sen followed after them in the shadows, and the 10 creatures were determined to chase down the rat that was Wang Yuhang. If he needed saving, Han Sen wasn't sure he could do anything for the little uncle this time. Even Wang Yuhang knew this was too much. With the boons and bonus effects granted by the angel gene fluid, he did not stop running. And as great as his initial advantage was, nothing he did nor anywhere he went shook loose his tail. When Wang Yuhang was in genuine danger, he would not shout. He knew doing so would be pointless, and he was aware Han Sen was in the vicinity, regardless. He believed shouting would only distract Han Sen and delay his own rescue. Han Sen followed the pursuit for a while, but soon came to the realization he'd get nowhere by merely continuing to follow. There was no chance for Han Sen to save Wang Yuhang, and there was no possible way he could tackle so many super creatures all at once. But as he watched them go, running off as they did, Han Sen suddenly had an idea. So many super creatures have run out, the shelter must be empty. Should I try to grab the Spirit Stone? If I nab Devil Blood King's Spirit Stone, this entire situation will resolve itself. If Devil Blood King opts for suicide, the creatures will become nothing but sand, Han Sen thought. Han Sen bit down on his teeth and summoned Moment Queen. Continue following him and ensure he draws them as far away as possible. If he looks as if he's about to keel over and die, save him if you can. Try to stop the monsters. You are going to Devil Blood Shelter? Moment Queen was quick to understand Han Sen's plan. There's a chance, and I'm going to take it. Han Sen's eyes told her of how sure he was of this plan. Then be careful. There are at least 5 more super creatures inside, Moment Queen informed Han Sen. If there are 5, I have a chance. I won't have to defeat them, after all. All I have to do is grab that Spirit Stone.
Han Sen noded rea suringli.
Moment Queen did not say anything further, and she simply took off after Wang Yuhang. Moment Queen's teleportation abilities could save Wang Yuhang if the need arose. If he sent Little Angel, the same could not be said. Even though Han Sen needed Moment Queen with him, he still sent her to safeguard Wang Yuhang. If the creatures returned to the shelter, Moment Queen could use her speed to kite them away again and guarantee Han Sen the time he would need. Han Sen turned around and ran towards the shelter. He didn't rush inside immediately, however. He used telepathy to communicate with Moment Queen, so he could get a clearer grasp on the situation with Wang Yuhang while he was away. Generally, there was a finite range in which the super creatures would follow. They wouldn't pursue a random trespasser to the ends of the world, as they were bound to a shelter. But of course, Wang Yuhang was Wang Yuhang, and he had led them for far longer than he should have had to. 2 hours later, he was still leading them on. Wang Yuhang was injured, and the angel gene fluid would soon run out. It was a miracle he hadn't died yet, being chased by 10 super creatures. Han Sen is going to get me killed. Wang Yuhang's spirit had been drained of hope. Seeing all the creatures still chasing him, he closed his eyes and readied himself for death. But then, he was lifted up by an unseen force with great haste. He evaded every super creature's attack and all of a sudden, found himself at a great distance away from his aggressors. Wang Yuhang was delighted at this sudden happening, and when he looked up, he saw Moment Queen had picked him up by his clothes. "Continue inspiring their ire," Moment Queen coldly said. Wang Yuhang had snapped out of his death-ready daze, and in Moment Queen's arms, he turned and shouted towards the creatures, "You turtles! Come and get me. I'm right here. Come and get your Wang Pinata." Han Sen finally arrived in front of the shelter he sought to infiltrate. Like an arrow, he went straight inside, unwavering. Han Sen leapt into the shelter, and before he reached the ground, he espied a red whip lashing towards him. He quickly dodged it, before turning to see more headed his way. It was a super creature that looked like a lion, but its mane was a nest of red snakes. Those snakes were the vines that lashed towards him. Han Sen's movements were quick, and he used arrow to dodge each attack. Like a sparrow on the breeze, he gracefully evaded each strike. Returning to the ground, he sprinted forward, bewildering the red whips. Following his evasion of the whips, the ground suddenly began to rise. Directly in front of him, the very earth rose to form a wall and prohibit his passage. Pang! Han Sen was not willing to bend to the will of the phantom wall. He summoned his flaming Rex spike and drilled directly through the earthen clumps. But as he drilled through one, another arose directly behind it, determined to prevent Han Sen from continuing. The red-haired lion had not given up on Han Sen either, and now, it was closing in on the intruder and the walls he drilled through. Han Sen continued to drill as the walls continued to rise. It wasn't long before his drilled holes began to resemble a cave, but soon after, the snakes of the lion's mane began slithering inside. Han Sen gritted his teeth and cast Toxic Dragon Drill in a bid to drill through the wall and escape their trap. Boom! 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 After quickly drilling through the next set of earthen walls, Han Sen broke through into a vast emptiness. Soon after, he noticed that he was standing inside a behemoth's mouth. The mouth was lined with a number of fangs, and it smelled like rotten blood. It was the mouth of something not unlike a hellhound, and Han Sen was aware of what he had just walked into. He felt the jaw of the monster move, and the roof of the mouth began to close in and come down to crush him. It was too fast for Han Sen to contemplate an escape, so he straightened his Rex spike to act as a sort of pillar. When the monster bit down, it bled and produced a strange noise at its inability to close its mouth. Han Sen took this brief opportunity to drill his way out of the wretched maw, but upon escaping, he found that the lion was already waiting for him. The mane of snakes lusted for Han Sen's blood, and they barred his way. Suddenly, spikes pierced through the floor below in a bid to impale Han Sen. But Han Sen was quick to react, and he took off airborne once more. Like a bird, he was able to evade both the spikes and the lashing of the red vines. In the next second, the crying of a baby sounded in Han Sen's ears. He turned to look and saw a black bat, bigger than any human, come flapping towards him with its claws raised. Han Sen clutched his flaming Rex spike and blocked the slashes of the bat's talons.
Young.
The flaming Rex spike had 3 dent marks in it, and the force sent Han Sen falling back down to the ground. The hungry maw, the red-maned lion, and the black bat were now descending upon him simultaneously. Han Sen cast arrow in a bid to evade each of their attacks and used a formation skill to plan his route. He managed to fly past the 3 creatures and realign his course for the Spirit Hall. If Han Sen managed to reach that hall, he would no longer have to fight. All he would have to do was secure the Spirit Stone. The 3 super creatures that followed him were horribly powerful, and each were vastly stronger than Han Senator, but with the grace of Eros movements, they could not do anything to stop Han Sen from racing towards the Spirit Hall. Han Sen combined the Dongxian Sutra and arrow, and for as long as he had space, no super creature could stop his passage. Wang Yuhang's movements were different than Han Sen's, as they were all random. He never knew where he would step next, unable to focus and calculate an appropriate target of where he should place his foot. In comparison, the Dongxian movements in arrow were very different. Each move had a purpose. There were no unnecessary movements, and each step worked towards a common goal. Everything was under the user's control. In the next second, however, Han Sen frowned. A beautiful woman appeared. One with bat wings and a scimitar, a bladed weapon that curved like the fangs of a wolf. She quickly came to block Han Sen's way. The woman was not wearing anything, and she had no armor. She had the tail of a monkey, and with her red hair, her appearance was a perplexing sight. The woman used her scimitar to prevent Han Sen from nearing her. She was so fast, Han Sen's passage was instantly halted. Han Sen had already used arrow, but still, he was unable to dodge the witch. She moved so quickly, she was like a sudden shadow that was determined to block Han Sen, and one that was keen to leap right into close-quarter combat with him. The sword emitted a distracting fragrance of dried blood, and it lusted for more. Madly, it slashed towards Han Sen repeatedly. And as this happened, Han Sen's aggressor pulled out another sword in an attempt to strike him down. It was fortunate Han Sen had already summoned his Devil Ant King armor, for one of the 2 swords she wielded connected with his belly. Blood was immediately drawn. It was lucky that most of the damage was spared, due to the hardy strength of his armor. He was knocked away, but at least his organs were still intact. The other 3 creatures had now caught up, as well. With his wild, beating heart, Han Sen's kidneys kicked into overtime as they imbued him with constant energy. A weird noise hummed from within him. While his body was operating like mad, every step he took left a shadow. Under the thumb of 4 cruel super creatures, he was still able to march forward. He might not have been the absolute fastest, but he had what it took to dodge each and every attack. None of the creatures could stop him now. If Han Sen wanted to enter the Spirit Hall, it would take him another 2 hours. He was afraid that by then, the creatures Wang Yuhang had drawn away would have returned. Han Sen spoke to Moment Queen telepathically, and he learned the Devil Blood King had summoned the creatures to return. They weren't following Wang Yuhang any longer. They were already on their way back. Moment Queen attacked the host of creatures from behind, in an attempt to slow their return. Unfortunately, her efforts were in vain. 1 hour. I have 1 hour to enter that hall. If I fail to nab the Spirit Stone, at least I'll still be able to run. If I take any longer, I'll be a dead man. Han Sen looked upon the giant Spirit Hall ahead of him in awe. It looked like a cathedral. Through the use of his Dongxian aura, Han Sen was able to predict every single movement of the red-maned lion, the big-mawed beast, the black bat, and the scimitar witch. Every time they attacked, every time they turned, every twitch of muscle. It was all foreseen by Han Senator. He orchestrated each of their movements, unbeknownst to them. With everything going to plan exactly as he wished, he was feeling very good. This was the first time he had ever pushed his Dongxian aura so far in a fight. In combination with arrow, Han Sen was like a god, conducting the fates of all that sought to usurp his rule. For powerful super creatures, despite their greatest efforts, were unable to capture, ensnare, or damage Han Senator. The combat was a mess, but Han Sen saw everything crystal clear. He was playing his opponents like a fiddle. He even had the time to observe their energy flows. Out of the four, three of them were blurry. Only the witch had an energy flow he could follow, which meant she was a second-generation super creature. Han Sen's eyes didn't look strained in concentration as he effortlessly weaved his way between spikes and walls, red vines and black claws. Han Sen had allowed the witch to lightly strike his chest a number of times. But suddenly, this time, Han Sen dodged. A red snake became tangled across the scimitar, and a black bat flew directly against a stone wall. The four super creatures had been tricked to go against each other. "This is it. Little Silver, kill them?" Han Sen shouted, and then also summoned Little Angel. Boom! The silver fox, which had been casually resting on Han Sen's shoulder, finally moved. It opened its mouth and shot out a bolt of lightning towards the scimitar witch. With a wicked screech accompanying the hit, her body became paralyzed. Little Angel's green eyes lit, and he swung her transparent greatsword across the witch's neck.
Young.
Han Sen had been working towards the execution of this plan the entire time, thinking he could take out his greatest threat, the witch. But suddenly, a shield of light encompassed her. Although Little Angel was able to break the shield, half of the power that would have been delivered directly to the witch's neck was gone. What's more, the sudden shield also helped the witch recover from her state of paralysis. Raising her two scimitars up, she was able to deflect Little Angel's strike. Han Sen frowned at this turn of events, and when he looked towards the cathedral, he saw a holy light ladybug. Its eyes peered directly towards Han Sen. It looked like a ladybug, but its shell was like jade. It glowed, adorned with a number of symbols. The silver fox cast out much lightning, attempting to break the knotted web of super creatures in front of them. But before the lightning reached them, the bolts were repelled by the light shield again. Nothing was able to hurt them while that shield was in play. Tsitsi, the holy light bug made a sound. It was able to create an aura of protection for the dazed foursome, defending them from any attack that came their way. Little Angel could break the shield, but couldn't harm the creatures inside. Damn, how can there be a super creature like that? Han Sen was speechless. If it wasn't for that troublesome creature, he'd have killed the witch by now. His plan had failed. Fleeing the battle, Han Sen took off running towards the spirit hall. He didn't care about killing the witch as much as he did retrieving the spirit stone. Little Angel and the silver fox did their best to kite a few monsters and keep them from following Han Senator, but as he neared the spirit hall, Han Sen saw a black shadow. A chill followed, freezing his spine in sudden horror. He touched his neck and his hand was suddenly covered in blood. His armor had been cut open, exposing an area of his neck that had been nicked. If he had not reacted, he would have been beheaded. "You dare come to my shelter? You are brave and foolish, young one." The Devil Blood King wore a black robe, and his cold, red eyes peered directly into Han Sen's soul. "I am fairly brave, yes." When Han Sen said this, he resumed his race to the spirit hall. The Devil Blood King's eyes blinked, and after that, his body disappeared. Catcha! Han Sen had already assumed a defensive posture, but somehow, Devil Blood King had slipped behind him and scratched his back with his wretchedly long, dagger-like fingernails. It was so close. Han Sen tried to dodge, but the armor was broken to expose his bloodied back. How did he get so close?
Han Sen frov ned.
He was confused about why his Dongxian aura was unable to sense his movements. It was as if he had an unbridled ability of teleportation. Han Sen knew such a thing was impossible. Even Moment Queen wasn't able to teleport. The Devil Blood King couldn't have been any stronger than her. So how was he able to suddenly teleport in the manner that he had? Han Sen was starting to feel as if something was wrong, and he felt his body begin to numb. The Devil Blood King coldly laughed now, no longer attacking. Han Sen was shocked. He touched his wound and noticed his blood had turned into black, sticky goo. This was bad. Han Sen was able to heal himself with the holy light, but it seemed as if he had been poisoned. "You have been poisoned by my devil blood, boy. In 15 minutes, your blood will have become stone. Once that occurs, you will die." The Devil Blood King coldly laughed and continued by saying, "If you want to live, hand over all your super pets. Tell them to obey me, and I will spare your life." And let me guess, do I have to obey you as well? Obey you, and I don't have to die? Han Sen said, with simmering terror. Yes, the Devil Blood King coldly said. Okay, I'll obey you. But first, uphold your end of the bargain and cure me of your devil blood, Han Sen said, with a face full of fright. Accept my spirit mark and I will. The Devil Blood King pulled out a cane, and then Han Sen knelt in front of him. He allowed the Devil Blood King to use his jewel-encrusted cane to brand his forehead. Lee Dongmu wasn't the only one dexterous in the arts of assassination. Han Sen was, too. When the cane approached Han Sen's forehead, he made a quick dodge to the left. As he moved, he threw his palm towards the spirit's chest like the sudden lunge of a snake. The Devil Blood King coldly snickered, seemingly prepared for this. His dagger-like fingers snatched Han Sen's wrist, and his lethal nails pierced through the armor and into the flesh. You have already been poisoned by my devil blood powers. How can you willfully elect to escape? And worse yet, attempt to assassinate me? Fool, do you have a death wish? The Devil Blood King was ready to break Han Sen's wrist. Not really. Han Sen's eyes glimmered with amusement. He reversed his hand and a fairy appeared, blowing white mist into the Devil Blood King's face. In a single moment, the spirit became ice. Kill him. Han Sen summoned over Little Angel and issued the command. With her greatsword, she sliced the icicle in half. The Devil Blood King scattered into dust and returned to the spirit stone, dead. Then, Han Sen used his holy light to remedy the devil blood poison. Wasting no time, he immediately took off running towards the spirit hall. The scimitar witch had yet to submit, however. She went after him, but Han Sen was aware. His eyes shone blue as he caught her gaze, and she froze in place for a moment. And in that single second Han Sen cast his sonic thunder powers. He punched the scimitar witch's light shield, and so great was the power of the strike, it pierced directly through without reprieve. The silver sun of his fist smashed into her body, unyielding. The scimitar witch's body was enveloped by lightning. Her body convulsed as she tried to retreat. Little Angel found her window of opportunity, and after flapping her wings to draw closer, swung her greatsword. She cut open the light shield and severed the witch's head from her body, allowing blood to gush from the exposed throat. Super creature cruel which killed.
No beast soul gun.
The flesh of this creature is edible, and you may harvest its life geno-essence. Consume its life geno-essence to gain 0 to 10 super geno points randomly. Han Sen summoned his spirit owl and let it gorge on the witch's flesh, and then he took off running towards the spirit hall without any impediment. The status quo in the shelter had yet to be wholly flipped, but Little Angel and Han Sen's pets had more than what it took to handle 4 rival super creatures. Without worry, he ran to the spirit hall as quickly as he could. There was a statue inside, reminiscent of Yaksha. In its forehead, a spirit stone rested. But as he looked, Han Sen began to develop an uneasy feeling, suspecting something was amiss. The spirit stone did not seem alive. It lacked its spirit and was instead just a stone. Regardless, he flew towards the statue and collected the lifeless gem. The Devil Blood King did not show after this, and so Han Sen crushed the jewel into dust. He didn't believe that the spirit had been killed. ***. This is not the spirit hall.
Han Sen felt avful.
If this wasn't the spirit hall, then he knew he'd have great difficulty searching for the true location in such a large shelter. The real spirit hall must have been hidden, a machination of the Devil Blood King, undoubtedly. Running out of the false hall, he used his Dongxian aura as he ran all across the shelter. His time was running out, and still, he could not find the Devil Blood King nor the Spirit Stone. ***. Han Sen cursed his predicament. He calculated his remaining time, and determined he had 50 minutes left before the rest of the super creatures returned to the shelter. But Han Sen stopped scouring the shelter for the Spirit Hall. The Devil Blood King had obviously devised a way to make finding the Spirit Hall nigh impossible, and he knew he wouldn't have been able to find it in the time he had. Instead of wasting more time, he thought it would be better to kill as many super creatures as he could. The Red Mane Lion was battling the Silver Fox, The black bat fought with Little Angel, and the fairy did combat with the big mod monster. Although Han Sen's pets were stronger, the holy light bug had continued buffing and increasing the defense of its compatriots. As such, the time it was taking them to kill the super creatures was far longer than it should have been. Seeing that the spirit owl had devoured half of the cruel witch, Han Sen then summoned his death knell to soak and drink as much blood as it could. The blue bell hovered in and above the blood, sucking the blood up like a vacuum. The blue bell then became red, with diagrammatic symbols and etchings illuminated brightly across its surface. After that, the bell tolled. Of course, Han Sen didn't have the time to inspect what had happened closely. He summoned his flaming Rex Spike and kept on running towards the holy light bug. If he did not slay that pest, it would be extremely difficult to kill anything. Han Sen had already sensed that the holy light bug was a second-generation super creature due to his ability to discern the energy flow inside it. The holy light bug, seeing Han Sen approach, skittered away rapidly with its 4 legs. Han Sen was surprised by this. He was exhausted and weak, so he was taken aback about why the critter would be so scared of him. The holy light bug ran away from him as if it was panicking. Suddenly, its condition became clear to Han Sen. That bug keeps on buffing other super creatures, yes, but it never joins the fight itself. Does that mean it is really weak? Thinking of this, Han Sen's mood lifted. With greater haste, he sped up to chase after it. But when Han Sen ran faster, so too did the bug. And with the speed of the super creature that it was, Han Sen was unable to catch up. The holy light bug eventually turned around, as if to mock Han Sen. When it looked back, Han Sen summoned his devil eye mask. His eyes flashed with a blue light that seemed to confuse the bug. It stopped moving, and its holy light dimmed. D. Han Sen cast Sonic Thunder Punch at the shell of the creature with unbridled force. Thunder sounded in the shelter as a sun of silver light was driven inside the bug. It screamed as lightning poured out of its every orifice. Little Angel? It hadn't been killed yet, so he called over his pet to deliver the finisher. With her great sword, she pierced right through the shell. Super creature Holy Light Shield bug killed.
No beast soul gun.
The flesh of this creature is edible, and you may harvest its life geno essence. Consume its life geno essence, gain 0 to 10 super geno points randomly. Again, no beast soul? Why am I so unfortunate? Han Sen recalled his promise to Wang Yuhang, who was set to receive the first beast soul. Now, his thoughts were starting to shift. I shouldn't have allowed him to get first pick of a beast soul. With his bad luck, we are likely not to receive any today, anyway.